I know.
All right. Good evening. This is a meeting of the Community Preservation Committee on Wednesday, November 6, 2013. Our order of business this evening is first to have a public hearing on our 3 warrant articles for the town meeting. We have an appointment with Matt Belisle of Pear regarding the Highland Lake Dam study that we have commissioned. And then at around 8:15, we have a meeting with a group of neighbors and representatives from the Norfolk Airport Neighborhood Association, or whatever their formal name is. Other items on the agenda, we need to talk about preparing for town meeting and who's going to do presentations. Have an update on Jane and Paul's Farm Working Committee. We have an update on the H. Olive Day Playground progress. We have updates on Gump's Farm, which is now known as Norfolk Community Park at Rockwood Road progress. Let's see what else. We need to reorganize our committee a little bit. We have minutes, and we might talk about some items for the Springtown meeting. So without further ado, we will get right into the public hearing for the 3 warrant articles that we have submitted and approved for the fall town meeting, which I believe is November 19. And I will make a motion to open the public hearing for the warrant articles.
Seconded.
Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? We are now in a public hearing for warrant articles. So what is currently Article 9 on the Selectmen's agenda, and I don't think it will be changed, is to see if the town will vote to appropriate and transfer from Community Preservation Fund Historic Reserve a sum of $12,000 to establish a formal entrance to the historic Highland Lake and Fales Memorial Park, with the access being between 12 and 20 Main Street. This includes surveying, wetlands delineation, trail mapping, and parking. And it's a second somewhat related article we decided, or somewhat related project, we decided to lump them together. We're going to, Historical Commission will create some informative sign panels both at Highland Lake, City Mills, and Pondville. So a member of the Historical Commission, Barbara Bartholomew, came before us with this idea. Highland Lake, I don't remember what year it was acquired, but we've had not very good access to it. There was a parcel on Campbell Street we were trying to acquire, which we had determined would be our access, but it has been mired in title issues, and it has not yet come to the town, although we are hopeful that we will still get it. But as Barbara noted to us, for some folks, that's like climbing a little mountain out there because it's very steep. And we had always looked at the entrance on Main Street as a potential alternative entrance, but we're trying to establish the one at Campbell Street was our priority at the time. So she took a look at this, and between 12 and 20 Main Street is a very flat entrance. It already is an existing cart path. It actually leads to 2 homes that abut Highland Lake. And her idea was to create the formal entrance there with just a couple of pull-off parking spaces, so people would not be encouraged to drive into the property, but would be encouraged to park and walk. So on this picture of Highland Lake, this is Main Street. This is the entrance here that already exists, and the cart path. Parking would be just off here to the side. To put in the little parking, we need to just affirm that there's no wetlands. We need to affirm that the road has not, over the years, the cart path has not migrated onto private property. If it has, this warrant article includes funds to straighten the road and remove it from private property. They also includes a survey to map existing trails, which are already out there and are well used. And like I said, the DPW services. She has already received approval of Conservation Commission to move forward and gotten estimates on any of the work that might need to be done. So, and then the panels, the one at Highland Lake would
It would explain some of
pass
the
that
history
over.
of the site, and I think it would delineate the trails. I haven't seen the mock-up of this sign yet, but it would be similar in design to the one that's on Town Hill that has laid out a very detailed map with photographs of all the areas around Town Hill, buildings that are there and that are not there, that used to be there. And it's a very permanent material, and it's a sign designed to educate and inform and last virtually forever.
And what a lot of people don't know is that Highland Lake was a very popular resort area at one time. I don't remember the exact years. So
I think it began around 1890 and it ended around 1920.
right. So and then the rest of that article, it would be doing similar informative sign panels at City Mill and at Pondville, and she's already done several of these, so the funding is pretty well known, and they would just be really a valuable historic information for people who don't really realize our town is as historic as it really is.
And can I add one more point?
Yes.
And that is that the signs are actually made at Tri-County.
Right.
So we use local resources, and they do an outstanding job.
That's right. Any discussion from the committee on this particular article? Any from our audience? Okay, article, yes.
I'm in favor.
Okay. Article 10, to see if the town will vote to appropriate and transfer from the Community Preservation Fund an amount not to exceed $200,000 from the Affordable Housing Reserve, or it's actually the Housing Reserve, to be transferred to the Municipal Affordable Housing Trust Fund to be used to acquire, create, preserve, and/or support affordable housing in the town of Norfolk. The Municipal Affordable Housing Trust came before the board and asked them for some additional funding. We already have given them money at multiple town meetings, and the main reason for doing this now and doing it in the past is housing prices are still on the low side, and they have determined that their best way to create affordable housing is to most often buy existing homes and either renovate them or replace them. And as they sell affordable homes, they do generate that sales money back into their account, but it is not the amount that they have spent in creating the affordable homes. So to keep going, and they've also had a delay in a couple of houses that they expected would come forward and be sold already, and they haven't, which means funds are a little low. So to aid them in continuing to find and purchase attractive properties, the board agreed to fund, with the permission of town meeting, another $200,000 to enable them to continue to move forward and make progress toward the state mandated 10% goal of affordable housing in the town. And that's pretty much that. Anyone on the board want to add anything else? Any comment from the audience? Okay, our Article 11. Nope, I just skipped over one. What did I miss the first one? I missed number 8, sorry. I started halfway through. To see if the town will vote to appropriate and transfer from the Community Preservation Fund, Open Space Reserve, a sum of $46,000 for the purposes of purchasing a conservation restriction on approximately 4.3 acres of the Gray property on Marshall Street and constructing a parking lot, with the expenditure of said funds to be contingent on Mass Audubon obtaining $96,787,000 in funding for the purchase of said property. And both the advisory board and the board of selectmen have approved this warrant article as well. This is a map of the Gray property. It is on Marshall Street. If you know where the Lind Farm entrance is on Marshall Street, this is on the opposite side, closer to Route 115 and just past the new housing development that I can't remember the name of it. And basically this land at the rear abuts existing Stony Brook property, which a lot of people don't realize actually extends beyond Audubon Trail. Their trails dead end at the property that is the abutting property, and the intent here is to provide a wider wildlife corridor, to be able to extend their trail all the way out to Marshall Street. And from Marshall Street, it is only about 2 houses down to access the entrance to the Lind Farm. And from the Lind Farm, you can actually walk all the way over to the Rentham State School, which is also Lind Farm, as it abuts into Rentham. So it provides a very nice wildlife corridor, a walking trail, but of more, perhaps even more interest to the town is that we would reach an agreement with Audubon where we would have parking at the street on their property at Marshall Street. And the parking on Marshall Street would provide parking also for Lind Farm, which currently has really no viable parking. We're only contributing a small amount to the total purchase price. The owner is actually selling at half the appraised value. The town would contribute, I've lost it.
This amount here, this 46,000?
Yeah, well, it's 40, we actually contribute 36,000 roughly, and we've set aside about 10,000 for legal fees, which should be more than ample, but we've learned always to budget up. So it would, as I said, it would be contingent on the agreement for the parking, the conservation restriction, and Audubon raising their amount of the money, which is the 96,000. So hopefully I've explained that succinctly. And any other comments from the board on this one? Audience?
Yes.
Take a microphone, please.
Would it be possible to have a map displayed at town meeting, possibly showing that, how woodsy it is, and one without the woods?
What do you mean without?
Oh,
just a outline?
Line.
Yeah, it is very woodsy, but
Field card that
Yep.
shows, well, how close is it to Lynn Farm and.
yes, Audubon actually will be doing a presentation at town meeting, and I'm presuming, we'll ask for our standard 5 slides in 5 minutes, and I'm presuming I had suggested that they have that kind of broad overview map for other meetings that they've already attended. So we would have the same presentation or similar presentation at town meeting.
In favor of the article.
Thank you. Any other comments?
If the full 46,000 is not utilized, it will,
Right, if the full, 2 things. One, if Audubon can't come up with their amount of the money, et cetera, this just goes back into our fund and it just goes away. If we do not expend the full 46, in other words, legal costs are less than the fairly good amount that we've budgeted, whatever's left over would go back into the community preservation fund from which it was taken, so the open space account. We've just learned with legal fees, if there's a lot of back and forth with regard to agreements, sometimes the costs can add up quickly, so we try to over budget for it so that we don't get caught short. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of closing the public hearing? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is closed. Next on our agenda was a meeting with Matt Belisle of PAIR. So now you can pull up a chair and grab a microphone. And Paul, would you mind introducing this one?
Sure. So Matt is from PAIR Corporation. PAIR is an engineering firm that assesses projects relative to land use and the engineering and possible construction costs associated with them. We came up with the idea of possibly putting in a dam at Highland Lake. I found PAIR Corporation as a result of the project over in Franklin. Matt gave us a quote, and this is what did you say, an estimate of costs?
It's an opinion of probable cost.
Okay. Opinion of probable cost. So it would allow us the foundation to make a decision if we wanted to go forward and maybe fund a project such as this magnitude in the future.
And this actually was something that we had discussed way back when we actually purchased Highland Lake, was what to do as far as
Yeah.
the dam because it's on private property, and there was concern that the town didn't have control of it. And
I think what incentivized me was if anybody's been on, what is it, Beaver, is it Beaver? It's not Chestnut Street, it's the other street, Pleasant Street, right?
Pleasant, yeah.
On the right-hand side, going into Franklin, if you've been down that lately, there's a fairly significant construction effort that they put into place. They put in 2 dams. They revitalized 2 ponds. There's recreational trails. There's bridges, and there's playground equipment. And it was my understanding that the whole project came in under 800,000 or something along those lines. So it was a pretty significant effort, and it looks great. So.
I saw the playground equipment going up. That was nice. All right, so we'll turn it over to you. Perhaps you can, we have multiple papers here. Perhaps you can give us an overview of what we've received tonight.
Okay, I will do so. Thank you very much for inviting me in, and thank you for having us do this study for you. As Paul indicated, our tasking was to look at different alternatives for you so that you could have control of the water level within the pond, which you now own. This pond is regulated by the dam, which is downstream, and as was indicated, it is private property. So we did a study in 2 phases. The first was to look at different alternatives to move that control from the dam, which is downstream of the railroad embankment, to the upstream side of the railroad embankment, so that it would be on your property.
Good report.
And you could have control of it, and then the dam would almost become a redundant system and really wouldn't function to control the pond level. So we went out there and we did an inspection on the upstream side, looked at the stone masonry wall through which there are 4 culverts that pass under the railroad embankment. 2 that you can see on most days, and there are 2 below water that you can't see.
We've not seen those.
We haven't seen those, and that's what controls the water flow down through the railroad embankment. Those upper 2 are just overflow culverts to provide additional capacity. So we looked at just putting a gate on the stone masonry. And what I'm going to start with is just the report that it says a staple in the corner. This is the one that's the alternatives analysis. And if you flip to the figures in the back of the report, there is one that is numbered figure 5. It looks like this. Do you want me to put this on the table for the audience?
Is it in this report?
It's in that report, yeah.
Is it after these colored maps?
After the colored maps, yep.
This one?
That one. Yes, that one.
Aha, got it.
Is it in the book?
It's not in the book.
It's in the stapled part.
It's not in here. It's not in this book.
It's not in that. It's in the stapled report. The report that is bound
Skip that one
is
away.
the visual inspection of the dam itself, which is the second half of what you
Okay.
asked us to do. And that's why they're broken out. There were 2 separate.
This was there now?
Yeah, with you? Okay.
All right, so this is one of the options, and this is to install gates on that stone masonry wall so that you can control the level of the water that goes out of the structure. You can keep it high during the summertime, and you can let it down during the wintertime or in advance of a storm event. And this gives you the control, takes it away from the dam itself. There's a cost associated with it. There's also coordination required with your local permitting agencies as well as with the railroad, since you're going to be affixing it basically to their head wall. So you'd need to get approval with them. This was one of the options we looked at. This is the one that requires the least amount of construction and is probably the easiest to implement, even though it still has things that you have to do. And we also looked at 3 other alternatives, which are on sheet number 4, which should be right before that one. You're on sheet number 4 now that I'm getting ready to talk about. And this was to construct a new control structure upstream of the railroad embankment so that you're not impacting that railroad structure and kind of take them out of the picture, although you'll still have to coordinate with them to some degree. This would require building either an earthen berm or a concrete structure or a driven sheet pile structure in kind of a semicircular shape right out in front of those culverts and putting a new control structure on that structure, so water would flow over that and then into the culverts and then down to the dam, again, making the dam a redundant system, but putting all the control back within your pond. This would require a significant construction activity. There would be a significant permitting effort because you're filling a resource area. You would also create a dry area between your dam and the head wall, but it's something that could be done. And these are the three different options. In the top left-hand side of the figure, you'll see a schematic embankment dam. This would be using just regular earth. It would have to have a cutoff wall through the center of it so you didn't have seepage that occurs through. It would be designed to have the water flow over the top of it, so it would have a concrete cap and some stone armoring so that it didn't erode away under high flows. The second option, we'll go to the top right-hand side, was a steel sheet pile system, which is just driving steel sheeting into the ground, supporting it, and putting a concrete cap on the top of that to function as just a weir. This system, while it would work, would probably have a definitive design life because the steel is going to corrode. It's going to be saturated on one side, it's going to be dry on the other side, and it's going to wet and dry, and steel is going to corrode in that environment.
Any idea as to the life?
In a marine environment, you can get 20 years out of them. We're not marine, but we are, a wet environment. So you'd probably be looking in that 25 to 30-year range. You'd be looking at repairs. It's a repairable system. You just would have to go in and weld in overplates onto the steel sheeting and check your supports. Again, this system would have some built-in cost and a definitive design life. The other system, the last one we looked at, which is in the bottom of the page, is a concrete gravity dam. And this would just be mass concrete poured in a geometry similar to what we show here with an overflow section so that the water just flows over the top. This one would be your most durable system, but it's also costly to do so. All three are possible, same with the gates. So after we identified the different approaches, we went through and had the fun of trying to guess how much it was going to cost to build these. And we did a little better than guess. We broke them down into the different construction components that would be required to build each of the systems as we defined them. And we looked at the recent bid prices from construction projects that we have had completed in the last 10 years, varying from very large projects, over $1 million, to very small projects. So we got a good variety of contractors who bid on these and a good variety of pricing structures. Using that information, we broke this down, and it's on page 6 of the report, the stapled report still.
No, I think it's back.
Yep.
I think it's back.
Oh, page 6,
Page 6.
not figure 6.
There you go.
And we broke down the cost into the major design components as well as the major construction components. We included or estimated what it would cost to have construction administration during the progress of the construction, as well as included some contingencies, because we're just talking about this conceptually. You really need to have some fluff in there, some cushion as you go through into final design. Your foundation conditions can be much different than
Once you start exposing them and stuff like
Once
that.
you expose it,
Yeah.
one of the design components will be further investigation below water and below
We're well
ground.
aware of things that creep up behind the lines.
Exactly. So we've tried to build some of that in. So you've got some good numbers. But keeping that in mind, this is still just kind of an order of magnitude in comparing the different options to each other.
Yeah.
The gates come in at the cheapest cost, with a total project cost, engineering, permitting, construction, estimated around $274, under $300,000.
And the gates is,
The
That
one
was
on
the-
the lower
The
culverts.
gates on the stone masonry
So this
that
one
exists
is
for
the
the railroad.
required.
That was on sheet, that sheet right there.
this guy right here.
Yep.
Made sense.
Oh, I thought you picked from one of these three, but this, you don't have to do
That
that.
came in at what?
That one came in under $300,000.
Yep.
Then we get into the three options where we're building a new dam completely. The earthen embankment is under $600,000. The concrete is about $700,000. And the steel sheet pile that has the limited life is about $650,000.
So what would be the advantage of going, with a steel pile?
Less environmental impact. The footprint of that is a lot smaller than the footprint of the earthen embankment.
I see.
Because the earthen embankment has to be built to be stable, such as the side slopes have to be at about a 3-to-1 slope so that it is stable under various conditions.
Yeah.
So it will have a relatively large impact area to land underwater, which is one of the regulated resources from the Conservation Commission and the Wetlands Protection Act and the other DEP regulations. By going with a steel sheet pile, you can reduce that footprint and possibly make it more permittable.
Are any or all of these, and this may be the stupid question of the day, but I think of a berm, I think of something that doesn't move. So is there a way to adjust the water flow going in and out?
Yeah, within the berm.
All of them, actually.
Within the berm scenarios, we would design control structures to meet your needs, whether it would be a gate, a stop logs, or a stage discharge, was what they call it, where it starts out at one elevation. Excuse me, try not to sneeze at you.
Sneezing this.
So we will be able to set at different elevations based upon your goals and your operating procedures, but that would be a final design or a next step to look at where do you want to keep it during the summer, where do you want to keep it during the winter, what are your maximum flows based upon the hydrology of the drainage area. What sort of flows are we looking for?
When you looked at this, where was the pond at?
The pond was actually higher than it was in the 2009 inspection that we did receive from the Office of Dam Safety.
Okay.
It was relatively high. It was just below the upper culverts. You couldn't see the lower culverts at all. We knew they had to exist, but we didn't get confirmation until we reviewed that 2009 report.
And what month was that?
It was in June.
Do you know, was the pond weeded over at that point?
It was not.
It was not. Okay.
There was some floating debris at the culverts,
Yeah.
And there's a lot of it that has settled down in front of the openings. We felt that with the probing action trying
Yeah.
to find some inverts. But it was not weeded over at that point. June pretty much ended the rain that we saw in the spring, and then we hit the drier section going through the summertime.
Yeah.
So we still had some pool left while we did our inspection.
Dan, relative, kind of the whole incentive behind this was to make this a usable pond on a continuous basis. In the winter, we know that there's no weeds, and it's kind of easy to get out there, especially if it's frozen. You can put the boat out there, and in the summer, it just totally weeds out, or algae or whatever it is that gets in there. What's your thoughts about the best means of control, or for the best method to control that? Is it the
Control the
water
water
height?
level?
I mean, you're still going to have to get in there and clean up the water, or is this going to give us the control that we're looking for?
You mean control the weeds?
Yeah, to manage the weed and the algae.
Well, the algae is probably more a factor of the nutrients and other stuff that's in the water that comes from upstream. The weeds that are growing up from the bottom can sometimes be controlled by fluctuating water levels. If by lowering and raising the water level at the right time, you can shade the weeds so that they stop growing. I think a lot of the weeds that you see, especially in aerial photographs, are probably weeds that are floating on the surface. I don't know if you saw any of them, duckweed or anything.
Yeah, again, when we were out there, the weeds had not come in yet. It was still early in the blooms that occur later in the summer.
But it really depends on what type of weed it is. And when I think CPC paid for the Concom to have that study done.
Yeah. A few years ago.
Yeah. Highland Lake was one of the lakes that didn't seem to be much of a problem in terms of weeds, other than, in the summertime when it greens up from, I don't know if it's algae or duckweed or whatever's on the surface.
Is there any control mechanism for that?
Short of herbicides?
I guess.
Yeah, again, it's just fluctuating water level
Yeah.
at the right times.
The other thing we did as part of this alternative study is we looked at the permitting requirements, and we tabulated those for you as well on page 4. really the permits are generally about the same for all of the alternatives. The only difference is for the earthen and the concrete dam, which has a relatively large footprint. There may be a requirement for an environmental impact report, an EIR, which is quite a significant report that the Office of Environmental Affairs would possibly request, depending upon the impacts of the final design. So that's something to consider, but it's something that you would find out relatively early. If that was the route you wanted to go, we would suggest having an early meeting with them, a pre-planning meeting, say, this is what we'd like to do. How do you think this is going to impact it? We feel that it doesn't exceed the thresholds. Do you agree with us? If they don't, then you can rethink and go a different direction with the control.
How is the Army Corps involved? Are they involved in all dam?
They're involved with work within resource areas due to the programmatic general permit that they have entered into with the Commonwealth.
Okay.
And there are certain thresholds that if you work below those thresholds, you get a quick turnaround. It's called Category 1 or Category 2. If you go beyond those thresholds, then you have to go before them and provide justification for the impacts to the resource areas. And also, anytime you place any fill within a water body, the Army Corps will be involved.
Based on what you saw when you guys got in there, in the current dam situation, is there any jeopardous situation that you see that could develop down the line if we just said, okay, well, we're not going to fund this, and it's too much money or whatever,
Well, that's a nice segue into our second report.
We talked in the parking lot.
Before we start the second part, can I just ask one more question?
Any more questions on the first one, yeah.
And that is, looking at this chart of all this little X's that imply some action.
Yes.
Do you have any experience with the railroad, and do you have any opinions about how, are they going to just go crazy, or are they going to say, oh, no problem?
It's somewhere in between.
Oh, great.
It really is going to
It's
be.
an active passenger line.
It's an active line.
Yeah,
They have
right.
certain restrictions as what you can do on the rail. You're not exactly on it. You're just going to be mounting something to the face of the culvert. They're going to likely require that you demonstrate that impounding the water there is not going to change the conditions under which that embankment is currently stable. Their concern
Like
is the stability.
shift it?
Like, move it, change the saturation condition within it, which will change
Yeah.
the strength of the soils. It would be easy to demonstrate that. You just have to go through the analysis, but we're not changing the normal pool elevation.
Is that a big
with-
expense?
It's not a huge expense. It's more convincing them that this is the right study and we're going to keep it at the normal pool. It will somewhat depend who you're dealing with at the railroad and how receptive they are to what you want to do.
Yeah.
If you have someone who is really against it, it can become more difficult. But we don't know that going in. We just know you're going to have to coordinate with them. It's an active line. They have restrictions that you have to deal with, and they're dealing with public safety.
From a budget cost standpoint, was any of that factored in?
It wasn't. We just really don't have an idea of what it is. We did budget in a meeting with them, but as far as any special requirements, we just don't know those at this point, and that's why there were some
So,
contingencies.
a typical study might cost, what, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60,000?
No, a stability analysis is under $10,000
Okay.
to do a stability analysis, unless they want us to do something really outrageous. But you've got granular materials, exposed bedrock in areas. It's decent foundation. They're just going to really, I believe, want to know how you're going to change the water surface behind the dam, their embankment, and if it's going to make things worse. They don't want their railroad sliding sideways, and they can't
Yeah,
have it
sure.
settle vertically either.
There's probably people on this table that don't want it.
Yeah, any commuters who use that,
Especially when you're rolling over it.
So I noted that, the inside of those lower culverts would have to be inspected and, I presume, cleaned. In any of these scenarios, is there any prevention from future debris going through and with the gates? I mean, are
We
they
can-
just open and,
Yeah, the gates, typically you put gates on the upstream side. so that they're not under pressure. It's called a seeding head scenario, so that the water pressure helps to seal the gate and holds better from a leakage standpoint. So that being said, with the gate at the bottom, as soon as you open it, if there's something that's floated up against it, you can suck that into the gate and move that into the culvert and have to deal with getting that back out again if it becomes lodged within the culvert or within the gate opening itself. There are ways that you can adjust it and put the gates midstream so that you can put a trash rack out front. And again, that's a final scenario. Here, it's very difficult to put something midstream because midstream is the middle of the railroad.
Okay.
So the only place you can put your gates is on that upstream face. If you put them on the downstream face, they're no longer on your property.
Right.
So they're not beneficial. So yes, it's a great question, and that is something that will have to be considered and looked at from an operation standpoint. You'll need to clear that out on a regular basis.
Should that be done now anyway? I mean, isn't potentially things being sucked in there now anyway?
Not potentially, they're there.
They're there, okay.
And
So there's debris in there.
there's debris.
Charge of it.
And that is one of the recommendations in this report as well. As far as who's in charge of that
Now,
is,
somewhat vague.
yes, we'll use that term. Typically, a dam owner needs to maintain the flow through his spillway and through the devices or components of the dam itself. His dam really starts on the other side of the railroad embankment.
So he's the downstream side.
He's the downstream side.
Yeah.
You own the upstream side.
Oh,
Maybe the railroad owns the
Well-
culverts?
I know that some of the residents around the lake have from time to time gone out in boats or whatever and cleared stuff from in front of the gates or the openings. And in one instance, I think they were going to have Bob McGee do it, and whether he did or not, I don't know. But
That's how a lot of the times it happens in these somewhat gray conditions, is the people who live on the lake clean up the debris. The one thing you have to be very careful with is when clearing debris from an opening such as this, once you start to get flow going through there, it does have a significant draw, and safety becomes a big
Right.
problem. So it's not something to be undertaken lightly. We recommend, and you'll see that one of our first recommendations in the design was to put a diver in the water, so he can get an idea of what you're looking at from a debris standpoint. He'd enter it from both the upstream and downstream side, so we'll know, confirm geometries, get an idea of the condition of the culverts themselves. And then in this report, we do recommend that debris be removed so that you have full flow through that culvert.
So who's responsible for it now? The railroad?
I would put it on the dam owner.
The dam
Right
owner.
now, because it will ultimately affect the ability of his dam to regulate the flow of water through.
Yeah.
But again, it's a little bit gray since you own the impoundment. This is actually upstream of the dam,
Yeah.
and you have the railroad in between. It's not a clear-cut scenario of this is just the dam owner has to maintain it. It's a little bit outside.
Yeah, and the state's position on all this?
The state is looking at the dam. This dam is rated as a low hazard potential dam. That means that they don't feel that there will be a loss of life if the dam were to fail, and that property damage would be minimal.
they're not given any money.
Yes, you're right. It's low on the state's priority from a funding standpoint, from a grant standpoint, and also from an enforcement standpoint. They're looking at the high hazard potentials and the significant hazard potentials to get those into condition first. It's still a dam, though, and it still needs to be maintained as a dam, and it serves a function, and it won't continue to serve that function if it's allowed to deteriorate. That deterioration could be a block spillway that then forces the water to rise in the pond, putting more pressure on the railroad embankment, and that might be a way to get the railroad to come out and do something.
In the Franklin project, and I hate to go back to that, but, I travel that way every morning.
Doesn't the water flow through here?
One of the
too,
things
if
that
it
I
gets too
noticed
high?
even before the project got going
So if
was
these things are plugged
the
up,
beaver dams.
Flows through here.
And I think that was a lot of the reasons why that whole project moved forward, or maybe I'm wrong, I could be wrong.
Oh my God,
So-
this seems so scary.
What's the risk of that happening in a scenario like this, where now all of a sudden, you're disrupting wildlife and, beavers put obstructions up, in front of this flowing water like they did over it in that, or is that a different type of dam situation?
No, this scenario here, as it is, and
I know
as it's
beavers,
proposed.
I only mention that because the population is swelled.
And you're absolutely right. The beaver population is exploding. They are a problem. They are a nuisance. If they come to your water body, they are going to work to dam up whatever outlet there is and raise the water so they can create more habitat for themselves and for their offspring. If you don't have beavers at the moment, then you don't have to worry about it.
They could save us a lot of money.
Well, there are beavers on the other end of Highland Lake.
And that's the problem.
There are.
Yeah.
If you already have them in the system, it's just a matter of time before they're going to come on down as their population grows and as their young mature. Then they leave and they look to find new water to raise their family in. And they have certain areas that they'll work and they will work to block off these culverts. So there's nothing to say that that debris down there isn't beaver activity, except that it doesn't. I haven't seen a pile of debris where you guys have had to pull it out. I didn't see any of the telltale chew marks around the trees on the perimeter. I mean, that typical cartoon-looking beaver mark,
Yeah.
that's what you can find.
Yeah.
And they will raise their dams, feet overnight. So,
Yeah, they're in the stream on both the up and downstream side of the dam, so.
they could end up here.
I was going to ask you a question.
While you're thinking, I looked and I noticed these weren't to scale, but just kind of for everyone's understanding, how big are the culverts you're talking, like?
They're about
dimensions?
3 feet by 3 feet for the upper culverts. And the guess that we have on the lower ones, because no one's really seen them, is about 3 feet by 6 feet on the lower culverts. So they're
6 feet wide or
6 feet tall,
6 feet tall?
3
I know,
feet
I was
wide.
gonna by putting up, by doing one of these solutions, right, does that lessen the impact of a beaver situation, or is that threat still there?
That threat's still going to be there.
Yeah, I
Until
mean,
the beavers
does it
are
make it
removed.
easier managing it? I guess I'm thinking as well, or
The berm options may be easier to manage because you'll have better access. You'll be able to walk out onto the berm
I see.
and remove the beaver debris, but that would be a regular activity that you would have to do.
Yeah.
If you waited a month, you'd come back and you'd have a significant beaver dam that could have potentially been built. But if you set up a routine of every weekend or every other day, you had volunteers go out and remove whatever beaver debris may be in the spillway, then you'd be better off.
Yeah. Wow.
But it depends how active the beavers are and how big the population is. So it's hard to discuss if they're not already here.
Go first.
Yeah.
Don't invite them.
Paul's turn today, right?
Every day is Paul.
6 o'clock in the morning.
We're working with another community right now that is doing improvements to a dam, and they've just taken out an emergency permit to trap the beaver and try to get rid of them because it's just being problematic during construction.
I mean, that place in Franklin was loaded with
Oh, yeah,
beaver dams.
I inspect-
Loaded. It was
yeah,
like hornets' nests, all over the place.
Yeah, the dams were several hundred feet long, and they'd been raised by 2-3
Yeah.
feet with beaver dams. Beaver debris is what they call it. The dam had raised the water by that much. You take them out, and it would be back overnight. I've seen beaver dams at railroad culverts that are 6 feet high. And, railroads and embankments aren't designed to accommodate 6 feet of water behind them. So, the beaver really do cause problems, and it's definitely something you'll want to monitor, the beaver activity that's occurring within the watershed, and, take proactive steps if possible to control them.
My son worked for another town DPW a couple of summers ago, and one of the jobs that they did was ride around and check the culverts for beaver material.
Yeah. Yep. Any other questions on that first report? One of the other questions that came out last time I was here was, okay, we're looking at moving the control to the upstream dam. What if we look at finding a way to maybe obtain the dam itself? And what would you be getting yourself into if you were to take on that activity? This is a regulated dam. That means it does fall under the jurisdiction of the Office of Dam Safety. So there are state regulations that mandate its operation and its maintenance. Those are 302 CMR 10 under Chapter 253 of Mass General Law. Great reading if you're looking for something to go to sleep with. It's a low hazard potential, as I stated, or it's been rated as a low hazard potential by the past inspector, and the Office of Dam Safety has not changed that rating. There is a roadway that could be impacted if this dam fails, and typically if roadways are impacted, they become a significant hazard potential dam. So at some point in the future, that may be evaluated through a different analysis, but at this time, it's a low hazard potential dam. So your requirement would be to maintain it in good operating condition and also to complete formal inspections on a recurring cycle of every 10 years. We went out and we did the visual inspection. We also obtained the inspection report that the owner of the dam had commissioned back in 2009. And this dam is a historic structure. It was originally constructed, and the date in 1691.
Nancy, did you know that?
Well, I knew it was very old. I didn't know it was 1691, but
1691, it originally had 2 spillways. Now, the information we found said that it was replaced in 1935, and one of the spillways was taken away, and that the structure was raised by 3 feet. So even in 1930, by 1935 standards, it's a historic dam. So it's going to have some historic significance that would go into the operations and repair of the structure itself.
Does that lead to costliness?
Yes.
Ain't it like it is?
It is what it is. A lot of the historic commissions do recognize that there's public safety concerns associated with dams, and they make you document what the condition of it was, and then you can bring it up into current standards.
Yeah.
There is deteriorated concrete just due to its age.
And this is on the downstream
This
side.
is on the downstream side. This is on Campbell Street. When you look in,
Totally separate from what we would, if we were to do something on the upstream side.
correct. This is the other side of the railroad embankment. Right now, you look in towards the dam. It's a overgrown lot that's utilized for some storage right now. There's vegetation that's growing up in between and adjacent to the spillway channels, growing up against what they're calling the forebay area. That's the area between the railroad embankment and the actual spillway. It's a kind of a stilling basin. It's a half-circle pool. It's about 7 feet deep, and that's where the culverts from the railroad embankment discharge into first, and then that water is stopped by the dam, and it either passes over the spillway, which is, if you're looking downstream, is on the left-hand side, or it used to go through the water wheel, which was on the right-hand side. Right now, all that's left is a steel pipe that is heavily corroded and leaking. So the components of the dam are still there, but they're aging. The stone masonry of the downstream wall, the top of it has fallen over. The earth is still there. There were previous reports of some sinkholes that had developed. We weren't able to locate them, but I think it was just we couldn't see them from the heavy vegetation that was in place. There are some other components where there was an old bridge or deck that spanned the spillway channel, and it's partially collapsed at this point just due to age. But that represents a safety hazard, particularly if that were to become a public access point. So those repairs need to be done at the structure itself. There are 7 feet of vertical stop logs in the spillway, and that's what controls the water level back through the culverts and into Highland Lake itself. We didn't see an easy way for those to be removed, and stop logs can be very difficult to remove during storm conditions. You can't grab them. It's hard to break them out with water flowing over them. The previous report indicated that the owner has a way of getting them out, but they didn't explain what that was. That is what gives you your level of control for releasing waters down below normal pool in the event of emergency. So we'd need to look at, or you'd need to look at how it is that you would take those out. In accordance with dam safety regulations, you're required to have a low-level outlet at the dam. That is a means to lower the water level below its normal pool elevation. It's kind of like the drain in a bathtub. These stop logs can represent that low-level outlet, but you have to be able to get them out for it to be an effective low-level outlet. So again, something that we recommended that needed to be looked into. The entrance to the old water wheel channel is a charged concrete structure located on the right-hand side. It is
Looking
leaking.
at the face.
looking downstream, looking in the way the water flows. So if you're looking from Campbell up, it's going to be on the left-hand side.
Okay.
It's the one that has the steel pipe coming out of it.
Yeah.
There's a diagonal crack within the concrete itself, which is leaking water, and there is a horizontal construction joint that is leaking water, and then you have the pipe coming out itself, which is spurting water. Shows that it's under pressure. That's a structure that needs to be addressed because it will, if it fails completely, it will lower the water level. And it also represents a safety hazard. You know, you've got this water under pressure there. When it goes, it's going to cause a mess. And if someone were standing there, they could be injured. All the vegetation that's grown up around the structure needs to be removed. Typically, the only vegetation that is acceptable at dams is grass, mowed almost looking like a golf course. For a number of reasons, it provides a it's not as attractive to burrowing animals because they don't feel safe. They don't have the tall brush to hide in. It's easily inspectable. You can see what's going on around you. You can look for those sinkholes. And it also provides a measure of superficial erosion control. The grass itself will allow some water to go over it before it starts eroding the soils. Right now there's bare soil, and under heavy storm events, you'll probably see that you're losing some of that soil into the resource areas themselves. And then, as we mentioned, the culverts underneath the railroad, we included those in the dam inspection. There is debris within those that needs to be removed. Also, one of the culverts that we could see, it looks like the floor of the culvert, the masonry looks irregular. I don't know if it's missing some of the mortar or you have a broken stone due to freeze-thaw actions, but that should be evaluated as well. And then the capacity of the spillway to pass the spillway design flood in accordance with the state regulations is unknown. It's likely that it's got pretty good capacity given 7 feet of boards, but the analysis needs to be done to verify that. So we went through. We feel that the dam in its current conditions should be considered to be in poor condition. Now, I just want to say that doesn't mean it's going to fail tomorrow. It just means that there are deficiencies here that, based upon the state's grading standpoint, require repairs and make it fall in that poor condition. It has been rated at a higher condition by another consultant several years ago, but it has been deteriorating since that inspection. There was more vegetation than was present previously. The leakage at the water
years ago?
wheelhouse, it was in 2009.
That's, what, 4 years?
4 years ago. They can change pretty quickly. But we've enumerated the deficiencies and provided recommendations for addressing those concerns and evaluating those concerns. There were also 2 leakage points that were identified by the orange staining that you see coming out of the ground with some water. That's indicative of water moving through soil, and that would be seepage through the dam itself, and they were in areas of other deficiencies, so it's just the next step in its evolution. So we went through and we came up with some opinions of cost to implement the repairs and the recommendations that we had included, and including some permitting costs to do some repairs and a contingency. We're looking at a range of about $185,000 to $400,000.
Where are these figures?
That's on page 10 of the bound report.
Back here.
So this is a strategy of, we don't build a new dam, we just put the money into repairing the existing dam.
Plus, you got to buy that. You got to buy that, the downstream side.
Maybe we wouldn't have to buy it. Why couldn't we just give a grant to repair the dam for the public
You
good?
could get an easement.
Well, then it improves his home value, his property value
Well,
by
I'm sure he,
$185,000.
something could be worked out.
I'm sure something could be worked out. I mean, if it could save us $1 jillion.
What you'll notice is a very large swing here because there are certain conditions that are still unknown until you get further into it. And we wanted to, again, from a budgeting standpoint, try to bracket it as best we could. Again, the dam's not in risk of falling down, but it has
Sure.
deficiencies that need to be addressed. And if that's where the control was looking to be transferred to, you'd want to take that and make sure that you had a dam that was meeting state regulations.
So there's perhaps the only less permitting that would be required would be you wouldn't have to talk to the MBTA? Or would you
You
still
wouldn't have to talk to the MBTA.
Or the
for this.
railroad.
The railroad.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Oh,
The other thing, too, is because you're repairing an existing dam, you would be considered a limited project under the Notice of Intent of the Wetlands Protection Act, because it's already an existing structure. You would more likely fall under the PGP for the Army Corps of Engineers. The dam safety program would be more supportive because you're repairing an existing structure.
Those funding sources?
For a low hazard potential dam, probably not likely. Your better sources of funding for this structure would be an environmental resource group that saw the value of maintaining the level of the Highland Lake, or a historic preservation society that would like to see the stone masonry and the configuration maintained at the structure. But grants through the state for this type of structure are probably difficult to come by.
What's PGP?
The Programmatic General Permit, it's a standard permit that the Army Corps and the Commonwealth entered into that lays out certain criteria, and if you meet those, then you can get your permit through the Army Corps.
Okay.
So long and short, the costs are about the same. There are some other incidentals. The other thing to think about with repairing the dam, if you were to take ownership of it, then you have the responsibility of its maintenance going forward, of its inspection going forward. But if you were able to come up with some other arrangement with the current owner, again, that's something that you could coordinate on the legal side.
But if we were to build anew on the upstream side, that would also be the town's responsibility.
That is correct.
If we went on the upstream side, what would happen ultimately to the downstream side?
What would happen is the water levels through the culverts would probably drop, because you'd be holding back the water at your new dam. Let me take that back. Let's start with going with one of the berm options. You would hold the water back at the berm. It would flow over the spillway at the berm, down into a stilling basin between your berm and the railroad embankment, pretty narrow, and then out through that culvert. Depending upon the amount of flow, that water level would rise partially through the culverts, go into that stilling basin at the dam itself, and if the stop logs were left in place, that stilling basin would look just the way it does now, and water would eventually flow out. If they take out the stop logs, water level will drop in that stilling basin, and it'll just flow out at a lower level. Similar condition will occur if you install gates on the upstream side of the railroad embankment. You just won't have that dry area between the berm and the railroad embankment. That'll be pond right up to the edge of the gates. But it does make that lower structure redundant, so if the condition of it were to deteriorate further, you could take the stop logs out, remove the pressure on that dam itself, and eliminate that hazard.
That's a lot to chew on.
It is.
It is a lot to chew on, yeah.
if we make a new dam, are we kind of neglecting the historic nature of the existing dam? Because
It's hard to say.
You'd have to sort of dismantle it.
No, you wouldn't necessarily have to dismantle the other structure. I mean, all you'd have to do really to make it so it didn't have any pressure on it is take the stop logs out of the spillway. And that would drain that forebay, that stilling basin area. Analysis would have to be done to make sure that there's enough capacity through there so you don't build up water again. But you could still keep the configuration, all of the walls, the channels, they're going to have to stay because the water's still going to flow through there. You know, that channel that comes perpendicular to Campbell Street, runs parallel to that
Right.
the machine shop, and goes right up to the rail. That has to stay because that's where the water's still going to flow.
Right.
But it would probably flow. How do I want to say this? The stilling basin, that pool, would then be drained up
see.
top.
Is that this pool? Yeah, that's this pool.
That's this pool on the cover. Yes, that pool there. If you take the stop logs, and you can see them in the foreground of that picture. If those stop logs were taken out, that's where you have 7 feet of boards going down. You could drain this.
Now, this is on the downstream side?
This is on the downstream side of the railroad
Is it on the other
embankment.
side of the road? Or
No.
is it between the road and the,
This is between the road and the railroad embankment.
okay.
Upstream.
For some reason, I don't recall seeing that.
You have to walk way in.
Oh, you do, okay.
Yeah, it's not right at the road. Right at the road, all you see is the 2 channels
Yeah, that,
that go up.
Curved
in,
pipe.
The arch and then the curved pipe. You go up beyond that.
oh, you gotta go up and
Yep,
in.
the wall that the curved pipe comes out is
Got
this
it.
wall in the foreground.
Need to have a little
Got it,
trip.
okay.
I think so.
If
Like
you
you
go
say,
out
I've
there,
been too afraid
Yeah.
to walk up
be,
there.
be very careful. Again, look where you're walking. There are concrete slabs that go out over the spillways that have holes in them. that
Oh.
are partially collapsed.
Yeah.
Don't just
Okay.
push through the vegetation.
Yeah, I've seen those.
Look where you're going to step.
On the
Kevin Roach to
distilling
give us a
basin
Yeah, you have to go
here,
around the other side.
is it just dirt at the bottom?
I don't know.
Oh.
Interesting. You don't know how deep it is?
The
Distilling.
previous report indicated about 7 feet,
Okay.
but it has not been confirmed.
Well,
we-
if there
we-
was 7 feet of boards in the spillway, then
It's safe to
Reasonable.
assume, but it could be deeper.
it could be
up-
deeper.
Yeah, but I mean, through debris and whatnot, it could have compacted up over
Yeah.
the years, yeah.
Yeah, and you can see that the kids like to climb into the culverts, that
Oh, I would think so.
tree going into the culverts, and the older photographs we saw showed a lot more planks going in there. So it's an attractive nuisance for the locals.
Kids don't get out of the house now.
Wow, that's very interesting.
Is this something that we could do a visit on our own, or would it be helpful to have you come with us if you had the opportunity?
Yeah, I could come with you if that would be of help to you and walk you through the areas that we found and what we saw. But it's definitely something that after reading the report, if you wanted to head
Okay.
out there on your own, you
You're
might be
pretty
able to pick
familiar
up on
with it, right,
But-
Dan?
Somewhat, yeah.
But we're right around the corner, so
Okay.
Kevin would,
it's not a problem
He
for us
probably
to
knows a lot about it,
to
too.
meet you
Yeah.
out there.
I would think he would know a lot about it.
All right,
Lot to chew on.
lot to chew on. All right, any other questions now before we move on to our next appointment?
No, that's great.
Because I think everyone needs to digest this a little
Thank you
bit
for
and then
this
figure out where we want
very
to go.
thorough, good report.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really
You're welcome.
nice explanation.
Thank you. Any questions, please feel free to send them forward, and we'll try to answer those for you, because this is a lot of information. But you guys asked the right questions. We wanted to give the information back so that you can make the right assessment.
Yeah.
Great, thanks, man. I think I'd like to,
Go out.
well, I'd like to know what, like, where the selectmen are, and maybe the, the benefit of this, or
I'd like to know.
do they understand the
Bob, too.
significance of the upside and the downside of
on
the
this?
upstream side and the downstream side?
Right. Matt, would you be willing,
Much happier about
if we
the
deemed necessary, to do a little presentation to the DPW and Board of Selectmen?
Say that again?
We can definitely work with you to come up with an approach.
We don't want to bleed you to death.
No, I mean-
It wasn't in our original scope.
I
but
understand.
We definitely would like to help you and, answer the questions and presenting the project. So within
All right.
reason, we can definitely
Okay.
work with
Okay.
you on that.
Terrific. Thank you.
Thanks. Whoopsie. No, that's it. That just happened to come up. Thank you.
Thanks, Matt.
So we have Airport Property Group, led by Stephen Johnson. Sorry, I know it's Stephen Jacobson, and that's what keeps popping out of my mouth. Do you need a minute to just... You're not there yet?
Everything was going fine.
All right, so we'll do just a little 5-minute break. I need to run outside for a sec.
Yes.
So Donna, you can turn on or off, or... Oh, Michelle, can you send a sign-up sheet around? Thank you. Steve, you are Kyle,
I'm Kyle Purvish.
and you are Stephen
Stephen Johnson.
Johnson. Nice, we've spoken on the phone. I'm Cindy Andrade and the rest of the crew here. So they asked to come in, this is, do you have a formal name, or are you just the Friends of the Airport Group, kind of?
We don't have a formal.
Airport Group.
Yeah.
With some ideas on how to work toward preserving the parcel for the town, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
And that's a lovely picture.
Thank you. So I'm Kyle Purvish. I live on Leland Road. And with us here this evening are representatives from the Metacomet Land Trust. We have Mike Penko, Tom Beck, and Susan Spears. And then we have Stephen Johnson, who has been hired by myself and another neighbor, Charlotte Richardson. And he is the principal at Sage Advisors.
Could you explain who those groups are?
From the Metacomet Land Trust, so it's the regional land trust that covers this area, including Norfolk.
Where are they based out of?
The meetings are.
So we cover, we cover 13 towns. We were founded in 1988. So we're based in, our legal address is Franklin. I'm a resident of Franklin, but we cover other towns. We were started by the community governments of Franklin, Bellingham, and Blackstone with CDC funds.
With what?
Community development
CPC
grants
funds?
back in the late 80s.
Community development.
Oh, community.
Different.
Oh,
But we're a nonprofit, independent conservation organization and have been since 1988.
do you get private funding?
We raise our own funds. Yes, totally raise our own funds.
Wow.
So with that, I'll hand it over to Stephen, but thank you very much for having us tonight.
It was Sage Corporation?
Sage Advisors.
Sage Advisor.
Right. My background is working for Land Trust, very similar to the Metacomet Land Trust. I was, for many years, the executive director of Sudbury Valley Trustees, and I chaired the Massachusetts Coalition of Land Trusts. I've also served land trusts in Montana and served in commercial real estate development. I'm now a private consultant, and my firm is Sage Advisors. So we wanted to reintroduce you to the airport, which I know some of you know very well because the Community Preservation Committee made a run at this property some years ago. But we want to highlight some of the features of the property. And we'll talk about why we think it's important for Norfolk to acquire the property and how that might be accomplished. And then we have some very specific requests for you to wrap up the evening. And we'll try and go through the presentation very quickly, particularly reacquainting you with the property so that we can have plenty of time for your questions at the end and we can talk about the specific requests that we have of you. So truly, the Norfolk Airport property, if you've driven down Leland Road or across River Street, is exceptional. But it's way out there in the northwest corner of town and it's overlooked. So as I said, tonight we'll talk about the airport parcel and the other Marshall-Kowski properties. I'll highlight what's special about this land, why it's important for Norfolk to acquire it, how on earth that could happen, and what we're asking of the Community Preservation Committee tonight. The owner of record for the 168-acre parcel that you see outlined in red there, which includes the airport runway and the open fields, but an equal amount of wooded floodplain along the Mill River, Stephen and Frances Marshall-Kowski. The airport property is enrolled in Chapter 61A, and much of the wooded land is under a conservation easement to the Army Corps of Engineers, part of their Natural Valley Storage project. This parcel has frontage on Leland Road and on Miller Street, quite a bit of frontage, in fact. But there are additional parcels that total about 26 acres that provide the frontage on River Street opposite the Conservation Commission's fishing access, river access on Charles River. Steve Marshall-Kowski tells us that it's all or nothing, that there's a total of 8 parcels, and you'll see them noted there with the acreage and the map block and lot reference. They're all contiguous, unless you say that the one on the opposite side, up in the far northeast corner, is a parcel of 3.4 acres that's off of River Street and opposite the hockey arena up there. All the others are directly contiguous. What's important? Why is it important to conserve this land? I know you've entertained lots of notions to conserve open space, and you've got some hot ones in front of you. First of all, the open space context, and this is taken from the State Geographic Information System. It shows on the Charles River, which runs across the top edge of the picture here, the Conservation Commission's Charles River access. That's in that hideous pinkish color. The other properties colored the same are water supply lands and other conservation lands off of Gold Street. And then the bluish color looks like a key or something running out of the bottom of the picture is other land owned by the Army Corps of Engineers as part of their natural valley storage. They have a combination of lands that they own outright and private lands over which they have easements. So part of the airport is under easement, and it's flanked by land that the Army Corps owns outright. And there's much more land up the Mill River to the south that is protected by the Army Corps.
So that is Myrtle Street going this way? Right?
Myrtle Street runs north and south,
Right.
pretty much through the middle of
Okay.
the property.
Just getting people's bearings.
Cultural resources. The Mass Historic Commission has identified the Populatic Pond area as an important Native American site. We've had a hard time pinning down specific resources to this ownership, but this entire area is deemed to be sensitive and actively used by Native Americans. Leland Street, I understand, has been proposed as a historic district. So whether it's Native American or early colonial, this was farmland until about World War II, when it became a summer home community, if you will, and those summer homes have become year-round homes. The airport property is what's left that's open, and it's very much treasured by the neighbors and others from not nearby, who love the open space and come to walk. There are trails throughout the property, but particularly the open fields are attractive to folks who are coming out to walk. But I'd like to focus on the ecological resources because I think they're very significant. I've spoken a little bit about how this property lies at the confluence of the Mill River and the Charles River and has extensive wetlands as well as floodplain that the Army Corps has invested in protecting. But those habitats provide suitable living arrangement for eastern box turtle. So much of the area, but not the open field in the main, is designated priority habitat by the Natural Heritage Program. So there is some measure of site review and protection for that part of the land that's so designated. Floodplains are regulated by FEMA and the town's local bylaw. Wetlands similarly under federal and state laws. And soils, we'll look at that next. There's extensive amount of prime agricultural soils. This is very wonderful alluvial soil, and that's underlying the fields and all the way. The only thing that's not prime in this picture is the blue, where the topsoil was removed and fill brought in for the landing strip. And with that much grassland, it's very attractive to grassland nesting birds. And there's a whole suite of species that are in decline in Massachusetts and throughout the Northeast, where agricultural land is growing back to forest or being converted to development. There's at least 80 acres in wet meadow and hayfield, open ground, and that is very actively used by bobolinks that nest there. Savanna sparrows and kestrels utilize the area, as do meadowlarks. These are all species of concern that key in on grassland areas. The problem is that it's mowed. It is managed under the state's agricultural tax preference program, Chapter 61A. So it's mowed, dutifully mowed each year, fairly early, June 21st this year. And so that clearly inhibits the bird production, and it is impossible to tell what its full potential is for sporting grassland birds. There's quite a crop of butterflies out there as well, and this has all been photo documented by volunteers who were organized and directed by Russ Hopping of the Trustees of Reservations, one of our other Massachusetts land trusts. We've also had consultations with Massachusetts Audubon Society. Doug Williams from Stony Brook has been out, as have their conservation staff based out of Lincoln. Everybody's enthusiastic about the habitat, and that extends, as I said, to the wetlands. State designated priority habitat for the box turtle. Spotted turtle, no longer state listed, has also been found on the property. And it's important because there's a mosaic of different types of wetland resources, including a certifiable vernal pool complex. What's special about this land? Well, I've run through the natural resources, but why is it important to Norfolk? Norfolk has, for a long time, spoken about how it treasures its open lands and traditional rural character. This property enhances the value of all those natural valley storage lands to the south, upstream on Mill River, and it extends, if it were to be protected by the town, it extends that protection to the adjacent uplands, which is very, very important from a habitat standpoint. The complex would total over 250 acres because the Army Corps has protected 142. And potentially the conservation would be compatible with some continued agricultural use, although we think the habitat values are the highest and most compelling values. And it's a good investment for the town because there would be limited improvements needed to sort of make it more available to the public for passive recreational use and to control invasive species that are to some degree compromising the habitat value. It's currently assessed under Chapter 61A. The total valuation of the 7 parcels enrolled in Chapter 61A is just $30,000. There is one house lot on Priscilla Avenue that's assessed, I believe, at $132,000 as a house lot not enrolled in Chapter 61A. So the tax revenue on a $30,000 valuation is vanishingly small.
That's per year, though, right?
Per year.
Yeah.
The $30,000 is the valuation, and multiply that by your tax rate, 1710, and you get the revenue. Development potential has been estimated previously by town officials at 12 to 15 single-family homes under the current zoning. And about a year ago, there was a proposal to rezone the property to allow for a solar facility, solar collector panels, that would be combined with a single-family development of about 15 houses. So all of this suggests that the purchase price may be lower than the full assessed value for these 8 parcels. The full assessed value by your assessors is $2.93 million.
That's if it wasn't under 61A?
That's the full value of the land not enrolled in 61A. And potential funding sources, because your open space plan is more than 7 years old, you're not eligible for many of the state conservation grant programs. That's why we're before you today, because you've done a wonderful job with the CPA.
Item that I put on the agenda, consider funding update of open space program at Springtown meeting.
Fabulous, you should. Local fundraising is a factor that we'll mention. I'm going to briefly remind you of things you know. 10 years ago, the planning board did a open space corridor protection strategic plan and looked at the pattern of open land around the entire community, what's already protected and what's in private hands unprotected. Identified 10 top priority parcels, and one of them is Norfolk Airport. And the little extract that relates to the Norfolk Airport, the recommendations, the town should carefully consider how this land might be developed in the near future. I think that's telling. The land might be developed in the near future. In 2003 and 2013, you continue to see proposals for how it would be developed. But its size, visual character, and proximity to a vast natural resource area make it a high priority, and we agree. Here it is, identified as parcel number 4 up in the northwest corner of town. You see the general sense of how open space corridor exists along the Charles River and to some degree up the Mill River running to the south, and could be enhanced by the protection of this property. So fast forward a little bit, 4 years, 5 years later, the master plan identified goals for open space and for water supply. And under the open space goals, working with the Community Preservation Committee to identify wildlife corridors to be protected, water resources and community character. And we would represent that this property embodies all of those: open space, wildlife habitat, connectivity, and protection of water resources. And enhancing public access to conservation lands. You already own conservation land directly adjacent to this. This would complement that and provide additional opportunities for walking. Water supply goals shouldn't be overlooked. The town has long felt that it needs to develop additional water supply assets and has appealed to the state for increased water withdrawal permits. This property, as this map shows, is underlaid by medium yield aquifers all along the northern boundary of the property, along the Charles River. It's a little difficult to see. There are two different colors of green here. There's sort of a pale green that's protected land. You'll see that's the Army Corps land along the Mill River running to the south. And medium yield aquifer in the brighter green along the Charles River and over near your existing wells off of Gold Street. This water supply potential has not been tested. There's not been any on-site testing of transmissivity or yield. This is simply regional scale mapping that shows that there are medium yield aquifers in this area, which is similar to the circumstance where you've already developed water supply nearby.
Can I interject for one moment? Yeah. Paul, do you remember, I think there was some well testing done there when we looked at it?
I do remember the discussion.
I don't know if it was exactly on the property.
There was some debate about whether they could utilize that as a water resource environment.
Yeah, you might want to check. I am pretty sure the water department at some point, and it would have been prior to when we looked at it.
It had to do with the Army Corps of Engineers and a few floodplain issues and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't remember what.
We can come back to that. I have spoken to the DPW and to the town manager and to the Army Corps, and I can address that.
Okay.
Yeah.
The permitting history, what you have currently for water demand, a little bit under your authorized withdrawal, and your authorized withdrawal ticks up in a few years. But the master plan identifies a goal of serving 78% of the residents, requiring quite a lot more water supply, considerably above what your current well yield is. All this from your master plan. So the conservation goals, as a summary, what I've said is we believe the wildlife habitat for grassland birds, butterflies, reptiles, and amphibians is really the most compelling value here. That's entirely consistent with use by the public for low-impact passive recreation. Trails exist. Nature observation opportunities are there today. A slight improvement to parking would be all that's needed, and some regularization of the trails, trail maps, and that sort of thing. And protecting this property would increase watershed protection by enhancing the existing natural valley storage functions, much better than having developed land with increased runoff from it. And it's compatible with the community goals expressed in your open space plan and your master plan, conserving community character, protecting potential future water supply. And there is one house lot I mentioned that's not enrolled in Chapter 61A. It fronts on Priscilla Avenue. It's much like all of the other lots on Priscilla. I know that affordable housing is one of the other purposes for the Community Preservation Act, and you've done quite a good job with providing affordable housing. In fact, Kyle and Charlotte participated in an affordable housing project along Leland Street. So that's a possibility. How could Norfolk pull this off? What we propose is that the town be the lead using community preservation funds. But you've been daunted by the high assessed value, the high expectation by the landowner. We think we need a solid land plan and new appraisal to undergird the negotiations going forward. But we also know that private fundraising could significantly offset the town's investment. And we do have a lead donor who has pledged a significant sum towards the permanent conservation of this parcel. So you have a partner in private philanthropy and in the Metacomet Land Trust, because as you know, land conserved by the Community Preservation Act needs to be protected, further protected by the grant of a conservation restriction to a third party, which is why we've reached out to a number of land trusts and watershed associations, and your hometown land trust, Metacomet, has expressed willingness and concept to hold the conservation restriction over this property. And along the way, there's been incredible enthusiasm for the habitat and enhancing its utility to the public and managing invasive species and so on.
When, I don't mean to interrupt, but
Yep.
when if Metacomet was to hold a conservation restriction, would that discontinue the use of it being hayed and things of that nature?
I think that one key element is to further research the potential for grassland nesting birds. Certainly keeping the land open is consistent with grassland nesting birds. There's not a economically valuable hay crop coming off of the property now, and that would be inconsistent with providing habitat for grassland nesting birds. So
I mean,
looking at that is really key.
And I told the group, I introduced myself earlier. I used to own an aircraft, and I kept it over at Norfolk. And, obviously, the maintenance of the field was significant to maintain its openness.
Right.
And when you put a property such as this, where it's so close to the flood zone and all that, the growth is significant. If you look to the north on the right-hand side, that used to be an east-west runway there. That was open property. That's all now treed in, and so what was that, 15, 20 years ago? That's all now small growth trees and large shrubs and things of that nature.
We've looked at a historical time series of aerial photographs from the 1940s, when it was agricultural land, to the first development of the airfield and its maximum cleared area, and then the regrowth around the edges, most of which is invasive species. It's not our native forest. So there is a challenge to keep the land open. That would be a cost. And to make intelligent inroads on managing the invasive species. This is where having partners in the land trust with their ecological knowledge and their land management knowledge would be really helpful. It also is a place where the private fundraising can be applied to ensuring that the land trust has fees that it needs for overseeing the conservation restriction, but equally to help with the conservation planning and perhaps endowing the management of the resource. Because you're absolutely right, it costs money to have the field mowed. There's not an income from the hay at this point.
Well, I think he uses that haying process to offset his requirements to maintain it as a 61A property.
The haying is essential to maintaining eligibility for Chapter 61A.
And he sells that hay, if I'm not mistaken.
There is an income requirement under Chapter 61A.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't, it's probably not high quality hay, but it can be used for utility purposes,
I don't want to compromise the landowner's position, but the landowner has represented that the hay has no economic value.
Yeah. No, that's fine. No, I'm just saying in general, though.
Right. I'm sure that it has some value as erosion control material, and so likely is sold in that way. It's not, it's not what you feed to the horses. This is from your annual report representing balances on hand in the Community Preservation Fund as of February 1st of this year. 108,000 or 4% of the total fund is designated for open space, and $2.6 million is undesignated. The other sums are also noted there for affordable housing, historic preservation, and administrative budget from your annual report as of February 2. But if you look back over the past 10 years of expenditures, and these data are from the Community Preservation Coalition, which keeps track of Community Preservation Act funding across the entire Commonwealth. 10 years of Norfolk's expenditures, just under $200,000 for open space, larger sums for housing, recreation, historic, and of course a sizable chunk that is to be determined. And this doesn't match the time period of your annual report, so the TBD amount is a little bit different. But it still has an amount close to $2 million in TBD money. So there are considerable resources available that might be directed towards conservation of this property. We've done a lot of homework over the last 18 months, and it's gone on that long in part to cover a field season where we could document the spring activity in the wetlands, the vernal pools, the breeding birds, and so on. And we've met with lots of partners. Massachusetts Audubon is very interested in being a part of the stewardship committee on this and helping us think through management, as are the trustees of reservations. I mentioned that their chief ecologist was in the field helping with the inventory of the property. Metacomet Land Trust is here tonight. Charles River Watershed Association helped us understand the overall Natural Valley Storage Program and the ecological benefits as well as the hydrologic benefits of that program. They've done a lot of partnership work with the Army Corps. We've met with natural heritage and endangered species and mass wildlife to gauge their interest in the property and their assessment of the value. Mass Historic Commission has been consulted, and most recently the Army Corps of Engineers we met with. From the town of Norfolk, we've met with the Conservation Commission assistant in town office, and same with the Planning Board and the Recreation Commission, the Director of the Department of Public Works, and town administrator and representative of the Select Board. So that brings us here tonight. A lot of interested players.
On the recreation, who'd you talk with?
I'm bad with names. The agent who's got the office in the lower level. Ann Proto, yes. And she explained that her current focus, keeping her quite busy at the end of the summer when we met, was getting a survey into the field to develop a master plan for your recreational and school facilities.
Yeah. I represent recreation.
Great.
On the CPC. That's our final stages of our development.
Mm-hmm.
If our CPC funds are used for the airport property, we're going to actively seek active recreation for the fields. We're in dire need of our soccer fields.
Many towns are looking for additional playing fields. I understand that's the case in Norfolk.
We're no different.
Right, right. And it's a tough challenge. I absolutely grant you that. When we look at this property, we think that it is putting a housing development on it is not the highest and best use.
No.
And it's not of sufficient agricultural value that it's likely to continue doing anything meaningful in an agricultural sense, although the soils would be capable of that. We think the highest value of the property is for protection of the natural habitat. And that's why we were looking for the evidence in terms of nesting birds, reptiles and amphibians, and so on. And so what I'd add to that is that the pledge that we have of private funding is for the permanent conservation of the property. So I understand, you know, it could be an affordable housing development, it could be playing fields, it could be pass by and let the private market do what will. What we believe its highest value is for passive recreation and its natural values. Water resource protection, habitat protection, and open space.
I think everybody would agree that the best impact is the least impact, you know, for the property. You know, like as Tom stated, you know, he's recreation. We have a affordable housing person, we have historical person, and you know, everybody's going to want a piece of the property. That's, you know, from a use standpoint, you know. Especially, you know, a project this size, you know. Any property that's got frontage, you know, street frontage like this has a high appeal, you know, especially from an affordable housing standpoint, because we're still way below, what are we, less than 5%?
All of these things come with trade-offs. That's the business you deal in all the time.
Yeah.
So what we're asking of you tonight, I want to make sure that we're clear about this, is that we'd like to organize a site walk so that we can go out there together and, you know, kick the dirt and see what it's got in terms of assets and limitations as well. And the next step, because it's a tricky property to look at and consider from a market development standpoint, is to contract for land planning study, which would, as best as possible, map the elevations so we could definitely establish where floodplain limits are, look at wetlands as they may exist throughout the field area and know the extent or limit of those wetlands, and the soil capability for supporting on-site septic system and residential development. Because the CPA requires conservation restriction on property acquired using CPA funds, we have brought you a willing partner in Metacomet Land Trust, and we think that negotiating a letter agreement with them about how this would work out if the town were to approve acquisition of the property is an important next step. And then looking at a potential town meeting warrant article this coming spring, 2014.
So the first thing that comes to my mind is you've stated that you have I presume it's a private individual who's pledged a significant amount of money. I'm guessing you're not at liberty to say the amount.
That's correct.
If you are, you can. But how would that person be suggesting that they work with the community preservation funds? In other words, what is their pledge contingent upon? Or how would they be using their amount?
For the conservation of the land. Mechanically, how would the funds flow? The funds, because it's a charitable contribution, they would need to flow either to 501c3 charitable organization, Metacomet Land Trust, and we propose that that would be the most effective way to leverage additional private contributions. The tax deductibility of that charitable gift could be preserved by granting it straight to the town for the restricted purpose of this acquisition for conservation purposes. Of course, the land trust will have expenses in partnering with the town to hold a conservation restriction. And I don't want to completely speak for the land trust, but the gift flowing through the land trust would help to support their expenses in being a partner. They'll have expenses in developing baseline documentation for the conservation restriction, stewardship funds to oversee that restriction in perpetuity, so on. So,
And what do you propose the property's total acquisition cost would be?
we know that you're limited by appraisal, but we think that the value is somewhere between its Chapter 61 value and its full appraised or assessed value. The town assessors have found a very large number. We think that there's an appraisal number somewhere in between that really needs to be supported by serious land planning.
And you know that we tried to buy this property once before,
Yes.
and we were turned down from the value that was assessed by an appraiser.
Well, we were
I'm just coming up
we
blank here.
were under we were under pressure. I you know, as a 61A property, because I was on the committee. I think Cindy, you were on. Tom, I think you were on as well.
I was on.
And we were under pressure at the time because there was a purchase and sale agreement on the property, and it was 2.1, 2.4, 2.7.
It was 1.64?
Oh no.
What am I thinking?
No. And so we weren't able to see all of the contingencies associated with it, you know, and that ultimately fell through. And we got an appraised value back 10 years ago anyways.
Yeah, but we can't disclose it because.
No, I'm not disclosing it, no. And it was significantly lower, so, you know.
It never went to town meeting.
Well, no. No.
It never went
So
to-
we did approach the landowner at the time, and, you know, we gave him the number. You know, I mean, we just gave it all, you know, because the delta was so big. And he just goes,
No.
you know, wasn't interested, you know.
So some of this is probably best taken offline as
Yeah.
we work through negotiations for purchase of real estate. But we certainly are aware that the property is enrolled in Chapter 61A, which means that if it comes under contract and there's a bona fide purchase and sale agreement, the town must receive notice and then has an option, right of first refusal, that runs for a period of time, not very long. And the neighbors wanted to be certain that the town was well prepared should that day come, because it will come. Sooner or later, the property will come under agreement. And unless there is an actionable plan for how the town would deal with that, then you're stuck in that horrible predicament that you were previously. I can't second guess, we can't review all the details of whether it was a bona fide notice and how that all played out. I've done a lot of those Chapter 61A
Sure.
right of first refusal rescues, and we could talk through strategy.
Yeah. I mean, I suspect at the time that offer was put in place, the agreement was so tight that there would be a lot of, you know, restrictions to hit his milestone of his asking price.
I think the town, in partnership with the Land Trust, has a real opportunity to work with the landowner to meet the landowner's needs within the constraints that the town and the CPC face with the requirement of an appraisal.
So you are asking that CPA funds be used to purchase the property in its entirety, is that correct?
Yes. Offset by private fundraising of an amount to be determined.
So where would that money come back into the CPC, or, so how would that work? So let's just say you know, he wants, it's almost, and I don't mean to sound sarcastic, you know, because I've heard it from him personally. You know, he wants 2.4 million, it's a number he's thrown out there numerous times. So let's just say that we purchased the property for 2.4 million. Then the land trust would come in and do what? Offset that figure with money back towards us, or
You could have-
or it would be,
We should probably talk about the mechanics of that offline.
yeah,
But, you know, many closings happen with two checks. in a home purchase, the bank comes with a check for the amount of the mortgage, and the family comes with a check for the amount of the down payment. The same principle could be used here.
Okay. That's kind of what I was looking for.
So, going back to Tom's suggestion about, or comment about fields, if the town were to buy it, let's see, and suppose the town said, well, out of the 168 acres, we want 10 for fields.
I haven't seen such a plan. The neighbors haven't seen such a plan.
Proposing, would that like put the kibosh on everything that the neighbors are
Yeah,
trying to do?
and affordable housing says, hey, we want 5 housing lots along the frontage streets because we're in such a deficit.
You have a lot of competing and mutually inconsistent goals, and you sit in a very tough position of a lot of responsibility. The neighbors have come forward with a private contribution for the conservation of the property.
That's great,
Okay.
yeah. Yep.
So if you feel an overriding need to accommodate other activities on this parcel,
That kind of
it's your
thing
turn
would go
to
away.
say what that need is.
Give and take.
It's unclear that the private fundraising would be there for a scenario that's not conservation of the
So
property.
like all conservation.
Right.
Yeah, okay, well, it's good to know.
I just wanted to know where,
Yep.
be clear where you're coming from.
Yep.
And that concludes where you're at. Does Metacomet wish to add anything to the discussion?
Not really. Our board voted. Hi, my name is Susan Spears. I'm here with Metacomet Land Trust. I'm a resident of the town of Franklin. Our board did vote to support the project. We think it's a wonderful example of what a community can do to control a bit of your future. We're highly supportive of it. We encourage you to continue to meet within your own council and what you think is best for the town. And if you decide to go forward and the neighbors want our help, or if you separately want our help for a project that would meet our own goals and criteria for being involved with municipal projects, then we're here to help. We're also here to help the Conservation Commission and the rest of the town on other types of projects. We're always around. We're right next door or spread out over the area. We know Norfolk pretty well. I live in Franklin. I've written about your water troubles back when I was writing for the Globe. We have had members from the town of Norfolk, including for a long time on our board, Alan Shaw, who I think some of you might have known. He made a small bequest to us to further land conservation. Christy Anderberg, Pam Musk from from Mass Audubon. We're part of that extended kind of green folks network. But we also do affordable housing, so it's very interested to hear that the town is still interested in doing affordable housing. We've done some of our own in Franklin, very different, not a model that we would urge anyone to do again. So we've learned some lessons too. But we're around for if you want help on this project or some other project.
Okay, thank you.
Hold on to that microphone for a second, sorry. Are you the bridge between the benefactor and the town, or are you the benefactor?
We're not the benefactor.
You're not the benefactor.
The benefactor is anonymous at this point.
Okay. And-
We've worked with other towns in similar arrangements, though.
All right. So you would be like the holding.
We can temporarily hold funds. We've also temporarily held fee title to land.
Mm-hmm.
But more often now, towns do want to purchase the fee and have us hold the conservation restriction. So that's the model that more and more land trusts are going to.
On this property, then.
Right.
That's what you would be proposing.
We would have, in this scenario that the neighborhood is suggesting, if it went that way,
Yeah.
we would have three primary roles. One is from the start to be involved in the planning
Yeah.
and to propose ideas and listen to what people want. The second thing is to hold and steward the contributions private that the neighborhood would raise because we're a 501c3. Hold them until such time as you are ready to close, and then we can write a check to you. We've done that in the past with the town of Millbury, or we can bring a check to your closing. We've done that also with the town of Mendon.
Are you at liberty to say any other properties that you've managed or purchased?
Well, the two I just mentioned, most recently, the town of Millbury did a major acquisition where private fundraising and grants, private foundation grants, we brought in about $70,000 to them to help them over the hump. And that was a private fundraising effort and a foundation grant that we helped them get.
Okay.
And that was about 3 years ago. And then about 10 years ago, going back to the parcels that were acquired by the town of Mendon, we didn't collect a lot of small donations. We were the vehicle for one major donation, where an individual in the town was contributing approximately $110,000 towards purchase of land, and this is pre-CPA. Mendon is now a CPA town, but they had a very, very active local active community resource program going, and we brought a check to the closing, I believe, in that case. Both of those were pretty big 100-acre or more projects.
Yeah, go ahead. I have one last question, sorry. At what point in the process is the contribution revealed?
That depends on, I think, the planning. We brought you a plan for the conservation of the property. We need to hear back from the CPC that you're on board with that plan, or you have a different plan of your own.
When you say on board, I mean, have committed to it, or?
Or to all conservation versus.
That would be the proposal, the purposes for the acquisition
Yeah.
by the town that would be the subject of the warrant article in the spring.
Yeah.
And with a green light for the conservation of the property, then we'd begin private fundraising to see if we can match up that initial pledge with additional private fundraising.
I have another theoretical question. In lieu of,
Just to be clear, we need to know what the CPC is going to back for a warrant article before we can do fundraising.
as you probably know, CPA money can't be used for any maintenance. So theoretically, could your private donation go through Metacomet and then go into some kind of a maintenance fund to be used, maybe not in perpetuity, but at least for a while?
That could certainly be discussed. I think that's one of the real advantages of working with land trusts and private philanthropy.
I wanted to ask, do you ever consider simply the purchase of the conservation easement, rather than out-and-out purchase of the land?
Land trusts do that with some regularity. Not always as purchase, more often as a donation.
Right. There's a toolbox, and books and books have been written. But yes, that's certainly one of the tools. In this case, it depends on the owner. This is a private individual with private property, and you're not going to take it by eminent domain, and we don't do that. So there needs to be an agreement. If someone wants to live on the land forever or pass it on to their heirs, a private purchase of a conservation easement is often the best solution. In this case, I have no idea whether that would be right, but that can be right in many situations for families in New England. Yep.
Thank you, Susan. That was very well said.
So it's a possibility.
It's always a possibility.
But
I would think.
in this case, no one lives on the property in your scenario, so he would still own it, but derive no benefit from it
The
with an
the
easement.
landowner has expressed no interest in a conservation restriction only. The landowner has been eager to sell
Okay, that's the answer to the question
all
then.
that he owns.
So you've already asked him about
Highest and
that.
best use.
He wants to sell it.
Other questions from this board? Conservation questions? Anybody else? Anything else?
I want to just say one thing. I'm on the Historical Commission, and the Historical Commission has asked Mass Historical Commission to include the airport in the historic district, the Kingsbury Pond Historic District, for better or for worse. I'm having trouble getting an answer out of them because they just love to give you non-answers, and you ask one question and they ask you 20 questions back. So we've had it back and forth twice. I'm getting ready to give up, but I sent them a letter about a month ago, answering as many questions that they had as possible. And I don't know whether this would help or hinder your goal, but I thought it couldn't hurt. Because the historic district goes, as you know, right along Leland Street, so it could include the whole airport property. And it is a historic property,
We agree.
so just to give you that info.
Right. The best information we have that flows from the Mass Historic Commission are the letters and investigations they did on the development proposals for the adjacent property. That includes the 2 hangar buildings and tie-down area. We don't have anything that is site-specific to the other parcels
Right.
still retained by Marshakowski.
Right. They probably never looked at that.
I think not.
Anyway.
Anyone from the audience have anything to ask, say, contribute? Okay, hearing none. So it looks to me, and I think that, I can't speak for the board, but one of the very next things I think would be the site walk.
Yes.
Agreed,
Yeah.
everyone? So I guess we can try to set one now. Who would be attending besides us? Do we have a guide?
Sure, yes.
Okay, sure, yes, that would be you?
Sorry, I was trying to get my phone so I could see my calendar. Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, might as well just set it. Let's,
Weekends for the,
yeah, because it gets dark early now. Yes.
Do you have a time to propose? Because I'm pretty open.
Well, I was actually looking at this weekend. I don't know.
This weekend would be good for me.
I'd be available on Sunday.
This weekend's fine for me as well.
Other folks?
I can't, I know that, but go ahead.
I can.
You're around?
Sunday's fine for me.
All right, Sunday. All right, let's set Sunday.
Okay.
Just after the chill gets off. I don't know.
1 p.m.?
1, or I was going to even say even 10 or 11, 10, 11. I don't know if people want to do it in the morning. I don't know. It's a bye.
No, I don't want to do it in the AM. I'd rather do it in PM.
Okay.
on Saturday. But weather-wise, I believe it's nice on Saturday.
I don't know.
I thought I heard that there might be showers on Saturday.
I haven't heard any weather.
I don't know. Was there someone who couldn't do it on Saturday?
Yeah, I got a gazillion things going on.
Okay,
All right, well, let's just do Sunday, and
let's
if
do Sunday.
we go in raincoats, we go in raincoats.
All right.
Um,
Should we do 1?
1 is fine. Anyone objection to 1? All right, let's do 1 on Sunday. Where is the best place to actually pull off cars and meet?
Leland Road?
Why don't you go down where the old hangars were? You can get in there.
Okay. At the hangars.
I can walk.
Yeah. Tom, drive.
So drive into the hangars.
Yep.
Okay.
Now, Are we going to be going through tall grass, or is it pretty beaten down, or are we going to be following paths?
They mowed it. They hate it.
mow it recently. Just in case it's
Yeah, it
wet,
still grows
I would
back.
wear some
Yeah.
shoes that can get wet.
Okay,
Full tick protection and,
shoes that can
waterproof
get
shoes.
wet, all right.
Exactly.
Good, that's what I need to know. All right, 1 o'clock on Sunday,
Beautiful.
we're in, and we'll go from there.
And any action you want to take about requesting bids for land plans? So we have a number. Do you have firms that you've used for land plans?
Do you have an idea as to what this has cost?
We've spoken with one friendly firm that's worked with Land Trust quite a bit, and we could derive from that proposal a scope of work so you could solicit bids. It would be relatively expensive.
What does the
Like,
land plan do?
when you say expensive,
More than 10, less than 20,000.
okay.
So this is soil investigation,
Topographic,
topographic,
vegetations,
wetlands.
very limited soil.
Oh, limited soil.
And we need to specifically get permission from the landowner for doing this scope of work. So if you were getting bids, we could negotiate with the landowner for access for this kind of investigation.
All right, wetlands, elevations,
So as to get a real comprehensive view of the developability of the property so that you can support a highest and best use land concept, and then the appraiser can apply their market analysis
right.
to a plan. An appraiser can't make up a plan. That's
How-
not their
How in-depth are the
expertise.
elevations? I mean, you really doing a full, like, topo on it, or?
Would not propose that you do a full instrument survey, but what can be done with GPS today is very accurate.
I don't know, do you know anyone that does
What?
this whole wetlands, elevations, floodplain?
I know years ago in my day job, we had a property flown and contours and elevations done on just an aerial photograph, but other than that, no.
I guess if your land trusts plural have suggestions of firms that do this and are friendly to land trusts, please by all means solicit some info for us. I mean, we know wetlands people, I know the engineers who can do the build-out plans, but I'm not sure.
There are 3 or 4 different specialties that come together under an engineering firm to create a land plan.
Right. All right, if you can provide us with some information to start with, that would be great.
Sure.
Do we have to get permission from the landowner to walk the land?
Yes, the landowner has given us permission to walk the land and maintains the land open, not posted, and allows the general public to walk. So, but we have specifically been granted permission to walk the property.
On this engineering study, is there specific language he has to agree to?
First of all, we'd be more specifically clear about what the scope of the land planning would be.
Right.
To the extent that it would involve delineation of wetlands, I think that is something that we clearly need the landowner to buy into, to provide permission for.
Yeah.
Basically, it goes, no invasive testing, generally a landowner's fine.
Right.
If you start taking soil samples or vegetation samples, that crosses a line. In any case, we've been granted permission to walk and nothing else, so we would seek permission to do the planning.
With wetlands, it would probably actually involve flagging so that it could then be transferred to a map.
Yes.
So,
I
Russ?
think some of that area has been delineated. I'm not sure how much, but I know there's a subdivision that went in down closer to where the hangars are. I know some of that was delineated, floodplain, wetlands lines, things like that.
We've questioned very closely the conservation secretary, and she says there are no wetland plans for this property. The adjacent property, absolutely, none for this.
Okay, that would be
Property
referred to
edge.
the, yeah, but down that way, so you can get an idea of how things are.
We know how things are generally plumbed, but we don't know the edges.
Right.
And it's very tricky in the field. In
And that-
field areas, it's simpler where there's perennial vegetation than in the ephemeral vegetation of the field.
And it would be preferable if that was done sooner rather than later, before snow flies. And
It's
what are
definitely
what's
easier.
conservation, what do they accept flagging between what months?
I think it's up into, and don't quote me, I think it's up to November.
Up, like through,
Like, it's already.
Like right
November.
there.
like now? Well, this is only for planning purposes. It's not as if it's a notice of intent to build
Right,
something, so
right.
this should be fine. Because actually, we did that when we did Gumps Farm. We flagged under snow, but it was just for planning purposes, so. All right, anything else before we say thank you and good night?
Should we schedule time at your next meeting? How would you go about writing an agreement about how we would go forward with the neighbors, the donor, the land trust? How would you internally respond to our proposal that this be a conservation project?
Well, I think, I mean, if you want us to, like, come to an agreement, a consensus, I think you need to have it written down as to what you want us, how you want us to consider the property, so that we have something to read and you know, internally, or actually, I mean, I don't want to say internally, but, you know, in a meeting environment, you know, yeah,
Discuss
review.
and-
I mean, because right now, it's a little abstract.
I'm sorry to leave you with that impression. We'll certainly fill out your application materials and be explicit that it's a conservation proposal for at least the 7 out of 8 parcels owned by Marshall Kowski.
Yeah.
We could say 8 parcels, and if you want to respond to us with a different.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think we need a little bit of more, you know, a harder structure to it. You know, that just defines exactly what you're looking, how you want the property to be managed, you know, purchased under what, and that there'll be matching funds, and at some point, those funds will be attempted to be matched, and, you know, where they come in the process, if you're
Is it true that we don't go to town meeting?
at all able to say that.
I've passed around copies of the slideshow. The slides here are here.
Tell him we're gonna have some
And we'll fill out your application materials
what he was asking for.
True.
with all of those points that you've just raised, and would hope that we might touch base with you at your next meeting.
Yeah, Betsy made a good point. Why don't you just say it?
Well, one of the things that you were asking for was that you're looking forward to us having a warrant article next spring.
Yes.
And great idea. I mean, we'd all just be leaping with joy if we could do that. But there's, and on that topic, I want to say thank you for coming here in November rather than,
September?
no, rather
No.
than next March.
February.
Oh, well, we tried September,
Yeah.
but we did miss by a day.
Yeah.
But the point I was going to make, the other point was, we won't go to town meeting with an article unless there's an agreement from the owner
Sure.
that we have come to an agreement on a price.
Sure.
So that when town meeting says yes, then it's done. So,
And any contingencies, et cetera, et cetera.
Which is why the land planning and appraisal is so absolutely important, so that we know what the negotiating limit is.
And get the appraisal
And
done.
that we have an agreement with what kind of a warrant article the CPC will support. And so that means agreeing to the specifics that it is a conservation acquisition supported with some private fundraising, with a willing land trust to hold the conservation restriction, and to have some management funds and the land trust expenses covered through the private fundraising. That's what we need. We need to know that the CPC is supportive of that so we can get to that negotiation with the landowner. To be able to describe with them what the use is, and how it all works. And so there absolutely need to have the negotiations, but we need to know what resources we're working with. We've got a pledge for conservation. We need to know if we've got the commitment of the CPC, and we need to know what the ultimate limit for negotiation is, the appraisal. So that's what we're trying to put in place, and we've been working on it for 18 months. We'd hope to get to you in September, but there wasn't an October meeting, and so, yes, we're very eager to take the next steps.
It would be helpful also when we go out, you mentioned there's one parcel that's not under 61A that you threw out as an idea as possibly an affordable house lot. So it would be helpful too if we could take a look at that.
Sure. It's on the slide in there, and I can send you, all the deed references are in there, so you'll see. Great.
Very good.
Thank you for your time and attention. Really appreciate
Thanks.
it.
It was a great presentation.
See you in the field on Sunday.
Will do.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Moving along. End up with a
lot of important business tonight.
Well, some of it we can scoot through real quick, so I'm going to skip around a little bit. The H. Olive Day playground progress.
We did sign a major bill.
We just did sign two major bills.
Yeah.
For our audience, CPA money was approved to fund a new playground in the front of H. Olive Day. And I went by it on Friday, and the equipment was all set up, and the underlying surfacing was in, and they were busy putting on the top surfacing. So I did send Mrs. Balfour, the principal, an email asking for an update. And so this is what she responded. I gave a copy to everyone, and I'll read it. I can just read it into the record. I skip over a little, but she says, I'm pleased to report that the progress on the playground has been steady over the past several weeks. The equipment is all installed, and the safety surfacing under the play equipment is being installed now. It is anticipated that this installation will be complete by Friday, November 15. At the present time, we are looking into the possibility of increasing the field size, and that was a play field that was adjacent to the playground. In regard to the entire project budget, we are slightly over. The original bid for the site work came in at $30,000 over what we had expected, and that was the lowest bid. Additionally, the well installation and wiring was $5,000 over the original estimate. The school district will have to adjust for the $35,000 contingency. We anticipate spending the entire amount so generously allocated by CPC, and I'll note, and by town meeting, as outlined in the budget proposal. All of us at HOD are so excited to see the end of the playground project is in sight. Thank you again for your support. She says, we haven't planned a grand opening yet, but she anticipates that will probably occur in the spring after the field is complete and usable. So that's good news. It's gone through. It's gone pretty well, I know, and it looks really neat. She had sent me pictures, but for some reason, they would not go to my printer, so I couldn't bring them. Jane and Paul's Farm Working Committee is also a pretty quick update. I also sent out a note asking for any update on whether the committee was meeting, and apparently they met last week. Excuse me, and they're meeting again tomorrow, Thursday night, with someone named Chris LaPointe for the Trust for Public Lands, and there's been no new information from the owners, Paul Newton. No additional information forthcoming from there, so I guess they're just working along on that one. Anything?
Tom and I are members there, and we had
Oh, that's right.
some minutes,
Sorry,
and I gave the minutes to Tom, and you just about quoted the minutes exactly.
that was Andrea.
Yes, well, that's a good report. We're all pretty active, the 5 of us.
Okay, good. So you're all going tomorrow?
Yes.
That's right. I forgot that you guys were on it also.
I drew the short
The short straw.
straw.
To
Chairman.
Chairman. I'm the clerk.
Oh, we can draw straws again tonight. I'll make sure there's a short one in there, Tom. And I will just note, this is just an aside, I did ask Barbara Bartholomew to actually do a formal application for us, because she had never done one, so that it's in our file. So,
Let's hear it for Barbara.
yep. And town meeting prep, I'll work with Audubon on their presentation. We'll ask for 5 slides, 5 minutes, not sure whether we'll need it. A couple of slides for the Highland Lake Main Street entrance, mostly just showing the maps, so that people can see where everything is. And Barbara will take care of that, and we were also happy to see that the Historic Commission's request for the renaming of Highland Lake comes before the parking in the warrant, so that she gets to explain first, and then it's not backwards, so that was a good thing. Let me see what other.
I think she wants to name it Highland Lake Grove, right?
Highland Lake Grove.
Yeah, just like the historic name of the park.
Right. So I've just got to clear with her exactly which maps she wants to show. I know one was the big layout map, and I think one is maybe the old Highland Grove Park with where everything was. So I'll just have to clear that up with her.
Site visits Sunday.
Yeah. So let's see what else. I can do the Gumps Farm construction update. Paul's house has been shaking.
I can give you an update. The house didn't shake this morning.
Yay! They've been compacting and compacting and compacting. So basically, well, the name was chosen since our last meeting. It is officially Norfolk Community Park at Rockwood Road. And the grading has been done, all the surveying, there were stakes all over the place out there for all the locations of where this ended, that ended, what the grades were, the final grades were gonna be. That was all done. The tree removal at the street has been done. The boulder inscriptions are underway. We did have issues crop up right away, if anyone has looked out there even from the street, that the abutter in the blue house, the property line for what is now the town property is actually up in his grass. So all these years, however many years, he had encroached upon the Gumps farm property. And in fact, the slope to his leaching.
Septic, yeah, is leaching, yeah. So before he bought the property, the landowner put in a new septic. Yeah, he was forced to. And then, and I think it just, that grading just,
went over onto.
Encroached onto.
What was Gumps
Kirkside,
Farms.
yeah. And,
So
Just the way it
everybody
is.
was kind of surprised to see the lot stakes going, like, marching right up through his grass and up through his embankment. And initially, the initial plans called for excavation almost up to his lot line, and that was part of all the drainage system. So,
Yikes.
yeah, so
So much for
reconfiguring
knowing
was
that,
done, and,
much for
decided that it
knowing
really
that.
wasn't a good idea to excavate up to his property line. There's already a natural swale that abuts his property. The trees that were going to be his buffer were going to go right against his property line, so the decision was made to leave the natural swale with its very brushy, weedy, tall, weedy things, and put the trees that were to be his privacy on the park side of the weeds, and leave what he's been using all along just intact. It doesn't mean that it becomes his, it just is better for his privacy, his protection, and of course, we don't want to be messing with getting anywhere near his septic.
Oh, yeah.
Shape or form.
No, don't want to mess
Yeah.
up.
No.
Can you speak to the front?
Yes, the front. So, also along the front, right around 150, right in the edge of 115, anyone who goes by, there's a kind of significant
A
swale
Grand
there.
Canyon.
So it isn't going to be as deep as it is now. That's not the finished
Where
grade.
is it? You mean
Right
right
along
along the street?
Right along the street. And it's all part of capturing the drainage coming off the site. It was kind
Oh,
of,
so it was put there?
it was already there naturally, but it was enlarged.
Oh.
It was already low,
Yeah.
yes, but it was excavated some more.
So it's going to be like that?
It's going to it won't be as deep as it is, because it'll be whatever materials they put in for drainage, and then it'll
Gravel
be
and stuff, like
gravel
dry
and
well?
stuff, and that'll be seeded and all. So, cones were put up along the street during construction. A guardrail was not planned initially, and I do not know the answer why it was not. It was not on the original plans. But DPW had reviewed the plans and hadn't indicated a problem. But when the excavation occurred, different story, and we decided that a guardrail was going to be necessary, a permanent guardrail.
It's dangerous if it's not.
Yeah. So there was a lot of discussion over the type of the
I
guardrail.
called out the police.
Yeah.
I did.
Should have just called me.
No, it was, there was no light, there was no cones,
Yeah, I know.
and there was no tape.
Right. Now there's cones and tape. So anyway, there was a lot of discussion over the type of the guardrail. Basically, the contractor, the consultant, didn't feel that, like a highway steel guardrail was very aesthetic there. So there will be a wood post guardrail going in, and it might have actually gone in today, if not maybe even tomorrow. Didn't go in today. It was planned to go in this week. So that was the area with that. And on the inside of said drainage, overflow parking does abut there, and there will be cement curb stops.
How many cars are they looking to accommodate in the lot? What was the master
Gosh, I
plan
don't
called
remember
for?
now.
Did anybody remember?
I would say 25-ish in the original one. I don't know. That was a long time ago. Other updates from there, the sign at the street. Originally was planned to be a vinyl sign, and we were going back and forth trying to make it look nicer, and so we moved it from the contract, and we're going to have some further discussion with the Board of Selectmen about what the sign should look like at the street, what material it should be made out of, thinking that it could be a precedent for future signs. They're going to look into making it, we're going to at least get a quote from making it like the old Kids Place sign, which I think held up well, but that isn't necessarily what it will be. Yeah, and so our consultant, Kyle Zick, has sent out some requests for pricing of the sign and different materials, so we can get some ideas. And then the timeline, let me just make sure yeah. And then there's two more things. So this week, what was planning to happen, whether or not it has, I'm not sure. The well was supposed to go in on Tuesday. The guardrail was supposed to go in today, but I think it was delayed because there was a lot of discussion about it. Thursday, in the playground, which is circular, there's actually a cement buffer that goes around it, right like where the fence will be, and it's to help hold everything in place, so that was supposed to be going in. And I think the playground people are going to be out there tomorrow morning, at least, not installing things, but at least starting discussions and meetings. And hopefully that will be starting this week. So next item, there's a little financial summary, and don't get all worried that we're in the hole or anything here.
Okay.
So we had, as with any project, there are change orders, things that you didn't plan on that occur. One was the guardrail. It's a price of about $7,600. You see some zeros here. These were a couple of things that were thought about and then not approved. One was to upgrade the flagpole light, and the other was to grave a boulder in lieu of a street identification sign, but our selectman, in fact, Jim Lehan, pointed out that that's fine for the summer months, but once the snow comes, it's going to disappear from view potentially for several months. So I think we all agreed with him and felt that a high sign would be preferable, even though a inscribed boulder would look nice. The concrete mow strip was something, the one that I just explained that goes around the exterior of the playground, was something that was brought up by the playground people just not too long ago, and was not known when we bid it out. I don't know whether it's a change in what they require exactly, but that was a new thing.
And what does that do?
It just provides the border around all the playground surfacing and everything, and abuts the fencing. It's, for whatever, that's what they now require, as opposed to like rubber border going all the way around, which I guess can deteriorate. But it's not something that anyone is likely to hit, because it's right abuts the fence.
But it's
low.
grass. It's grass.
It's actually concrete.
Oh, it's concrete. Why is it called a mow strip?
I don't know.
Nothing gets mowed.
I think it gets mowed right beyond it, and so therefore the mowers don't hit the playground surfacing.
Oh, I see.
So I think it's to protect the
a
playground.
buffer.
It's a buffer.
Concrete buffer.
Yep.
So you're saying that's not going in?
It is going in, but that was a change.
Oh.
That when the playground people sent out all the requirements for what they needed, they did not include that.
Oh.
And the well, we always knew that the well was not included in Sunshine's bid, and that was contracted out separately, so that's that project. So, and then there's the numbers for the play equipment and the surfacing, et cetera, et cetera.
So, can we go back?
Yep.
So has the well been put into the funding?
It was in the funding. It just isn't part of the, we had
I
Sunshine.
thought water was from the garage area there.
No, we couldn't use it, it was too close to their septic. No, what we did was we had it itemized out separately, but then we gave it to Sunshine to do, because
Sunshine.
Paving, who's the contractor.
Okay.
We were going to contract it out separately on our own, but when we ran all the numbers, it made sense for them to do it. So that is more going to them, but it'll come off on the other end. So we also do not have reflected in here a credit for the work that was not done at the neighbor's property, that excavation. That is not showing in here yet, because we don't have that number. So the Phase 2 numbers were the estimates that have always been in place as far as what Phase 2 would cost, which is the community garden and the trails. We don't even have a proposal for that yet. So where you see the negative $2,200 at the bottom, that's, like I said, that does not include a credit for work not done, and it also is reflecting the estimated Phase 2 costs. So it's not that we're in the hole or anything like that. It's just all things do cost a little more than what was anticipated. So
What was the excavating that was not done, but?
that was over right next to Kirk Cudmore's house. That was supposed to go up right up to his property line,
Yeah.
and then we left that be.
Oh.
So
You save money?
we will get a credit back for that.
Oh. Good.
So that's kind of the rundown on Gumps. Anything else? You should be able to see playground stuff going on.
You mean
pretty
the
soon.
park at Rockwood Road?
The park at Rockwood Road, I'm sorry. It's a hard habit to break.
Well, I love Gumps.
All right, so we also wanted to go out to the dam. I'll just bring this up now since we're going to the airport. And we wanted to go out to the entrance to Highland Lake on Main Street. I know everyone wanted to see that.
I think that would be very
I didn't end up scheduling it because as of our last meeting, we didn't think we were going to have a fall town meeting, so I kind of didn't see the point, but we are having a fall town meeting, so I don't know if anyone wants to tack on just the entrance to Highland Lake after the airport, or see how time runs.
Oh. and
I'm
just do it
throwing out the suggestion.
the same afternoon. Yeah. Sorry with me.
All right, so maybe not the dam, but at least, because the entrance to Highland Lake won't take long. We just drive up there and see what that looks like. So we'll do that. The dam visit, what does anyone think?
The dam visit's the good one.
Yeah. I mean, if somebody reaches out to Kevin,
Yeah.
and he's amenable to it.
Have you contacted him, or has
Huh?
Matt called him in the past? Kevin, about permission to go on his property?
Well, yeah, they got permission to go on the property.
Yeah, we'd have to
Yeah.
ask for permission for
Yeah,
us.
I mean, yeah. I just, on the dam, you know, I mean, we've all walked the properties, you know, I mean, there's nothing new here, you know. I would really like to know where, you know, where the other people are, you know, I mean, fellow committee members, number one, but, you know, are we going to get support if we bring forward a proposal? Yeah, because any solution is not a cheap solution.
Right.
Yeah, there's no cheap solution, whether you buy the property and repair the dam, or you build an upstream dam, and, you know, and there's a number of different solutions there, right? So do we want to spin our wheels and go walking around on properties and?
No, we could speak to the
You know,
selectmen
I
first.
think it's, yeah, I think we should probably find out what are their thoughts are on this thing, and, you know, I mean, does it make sense for us to pursue this?
You wanna
This is, I found this page to be pretty intimidating.
What's that?
Oh, that was all the permitting you need.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of chuckled at 45 days for conservation.
It's,
I like the unknown under the MBTA.
Yeah.
Well, so what are your feelings now after this?
Well, I think it's it is a big project.
Humongous.
You know, I'm trying to think of the benefits, the recreational benefits we would get as a result of that, number one. That was my primary motive for having this, you know, asking the committee to consider, you know, this project. I would love to see a higher use of that property. I would like to see, you know, that entranceway made open so that people can walk up, come in, fish, launch a canoe, whatever, into that lake. You know, maybe the neighbors wouldn't like that, but that's what I thought, you know. And does this project, if we go forward with it, satisfy that? Does this make it a higher use property? Would the selectmen support it?
With the town?
Well, I think you know, I mean, it's important to know what the guys who are sitting up at the front are going to say to the voters,
Yeah.
you know, or the advisory board.
In the booklet,
Yeah,
right.
don't waste your time, you know.
Why don't I ask to get on the selectmen's meeting after town meeting?
Yeah.
I
I mean,
think-
Dan, what do you, I mean,
I think sooner or later, no matter what, something has to be done.
with the property,
To the dam.
to the dam.
Either
I
on the
think you're right.
upstream side of the railroad or the downstream side.
Yeah.
Absolutely have to do something, because eventually that will collapse and the lake will drain.
Yeah, I think within 20 years.
Could be,
Yeah,
could be.
of course, that could be right. Well, we did, so.
I mean, the only thing holding it back is a couple of wooden boards.
Huh?
And that's it. Those wooden
Oh,
boards
yeah?
go,
Yeah,
it's done.
yeah,
And so it's just a matter of when, not if,
yeah.
we spend the money to fix it. Because, I mean, property owners
I
certainly
mean,
isn't
from a
gonna be able to do it.
conservation standpoint, I'd really love to hear what you think. Historic, you know, Betsy, obviously.
Historic, I mean, I think the common sense strategy is first, you explore repairing the dam. With
think
some
so.
kind of an agreement with Kevin, where, I don't know,
Certainly.
he applies like a Barbara application here, says, I need, you know, $500,000 to do this dam, and I'll sign some kind of an agreement with the town that I'll continue to maintain the.
Well, does anybody remember what he wanted to sell that property for? The dam?
Well, let's assume he wants to sell it for $1. Okay? That's like, do we want to own this? Do we want the liability and the responsibility that we don't have today?
That's a question for the Board of Selectmen and the DPW, I think.
Yeah, but when you
Right,
start,
but I mean,
so here's my conflict, right? So, when you start improving somebody's property for the benefit of the town, granted, you know, no question, you're only looking to enrich his property, you know.
I don't think it's enriching his property at all.
I don't think it is either.
Most people would view it as a
But what if
liability.
he turns around and he decides to sell the property?
Well, it's not like he's getting some valuable dam that people
Well,
are
we
going
would
to
have to have some kind of an easement, you know, in addition to an agreement. There had to be some kind of an easement that the town would have to this area. And what the details of that would be, I don't know, but, it just, to me, it makes sense to fix the dam as it is, as to try to go upstream and build something new. Because if we go upstream and build something new, now we're responsible for that dam and all the maintenance that goes along with it, whereas there's already one in place.
Right, where were the figures? There was this wide range of what.
185,000
Versus-
400 to repair it anywhere.
Oh,
Is that
from
what you mean?
185,000 versus 400,000.
To 400.
To 400,000.
Yeah,
To four, the
Right,
cost to
but-
repair it would be somewhere.
that's a
I almost
lot less
fainted
than
when I heard
the other
that.
ones. The other ones
Well,
were.
one was 200,000.
Yeah, well, there's a range.
Yeah,
It
but
goes
one
There was, one was
700,000.
up to 7,000.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, for the other side.
Which was, I thought, the chintziest looking dam.
Plus, there was one that had, if you were boating or swimming too close to something, you could be sucked
Oh,
in.
that's the way it is now.
Oh, Jesus.
That is the way it is now?
Yes, those holes that drain
Oh,
the
I
lake.
thought it was if a new
No,
one,
no, no.
something or other. Are you
The reason
sure?
that stuff gets pinned up and plugs those holes
Oh.
is because of the suction of the
The
water.
suction, yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, so it gets plugged up, then if something goes, or the kid pulls the finger out of the dike.
And then you get sucked in, yeah. Hopefully you pop up on the other side.
Well, this is under the section of construction of an upstream berm. It should be noted that a dam structure of this height and geometry may function similar to a roll dam, which have been known to trap swimmers and boaters who become trapped within the rotational flow. That would be my luck. At the base of the dam.
Oh, my God.
Or you have your metal detecting machine and we'd be in the boat. And my question was going to be, who's paying when I sue you? During final design, the flow pattern should be evaluated so that the associated risks can be managed.
Yeah, but this
How about
has been here
eliminated?
since 1691, right?
How many people have died, right?
I know, but he put this in
That's
there.
for the new thing.
Yes, it's
How
a
many
new
people did
one.
we sacrifice back then?
Come here.
I think this
It's a bad crop year. Sorry, you've got to go.
Yeah.
this dam
this nice
serviced some
boat.
kind of a water wheel that was industry there.
Yeah.
The area that he talked
So-
about where the roof was collapsing, I've been over there, and and suddenly you realize that this is not something that I want to walk out onto, because you go right through it.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah,
Well, if
I've
you
never
take
been
a-
up, I've never been up in that
No.
I went over there. I remember
You know,
going
I
there
haven't
with
been up there, but
Concom.
I was there for work because of something that was going on, and I
Yeah.
was over by there looking at that
Yeah.
thing, it's like, ugh,
Yeah,
that does not look safe.
yeah, yeah. I
There for
agree.
Concom at
Yeah.
some point.
I-
Because he had a spill or something,
Oh,
a
that-
long time ago.
Well, I haven't walked it, so I would like to see.
I haven't either, but I can't
I
go
like-
that day.
Oh.
No, I don't want to go that day.
I just can't.
Yeah.
That's a
Well, let's talk to the selectmen first,
I would like to talk to him.
and the DPW, and then if we get interest and support, then we'll go.
It
Everyone,
does-
everyone should go take.
When you say that if the dam collapses, the lake drains, I mean, something's got to be done. That's our responsibility. So, you know,
Well, it's the town's responsibility.
That's what I mean.
Not this
I don't
committee's, but
mean-
we're just kind of being proactive and
right.
seeing if we can enhance.
Better
the-
to say, here it
enhance
comes,
the
and
use
there
of
it
the lake
goes.
more, you know?
Do you think that,
Dual accomplishment. if we could-
we probably don't need Matt to come with us, right? I know it's not part of his scope.
I don't think so.
I mean, as long as we've all read this and can say,
Well, I
These
think-
are
no, I
the
think it'd be
alternatives
important
willing.
For him to sit in front of
Great.
those guys, and, you know, not necessarily.
very
spend
well
2
spoken.
hours.
Yes.
Say, hey,
Really
this
did
is,
a good
you know, what our thoughts are.
oh, let me find out when it is, and then we'll see if he can. Because Marion will say, how long do you need? 15 minutes?
December 3rd.
December 3rd. Thank you.
December 3rd.
The next selectmen's meeting.
Oh,
All right, so we'll see if he can make it.
voice of the farm.
All right, and then, yeah, then we can go forward with a visit. And I just wanted to note, remember, terrible English, remember, the
Yeah.
last meeting, we got all of the financials, but it was missing its cover sheet.
Oh.
This is the cover sheet, which makes everything nice and easy. So that was from the last meeting, where you got a whole staple thing that, like, you look at it and you go, oh my gosh, what is that? So this is the quick and dirty, so staple it on to the rest of it. We get these every June and February,
you
in
read
conjunction
this.
with town meetings.
Oh, okay.
all right?
Do you want to take
Conservation
I
man.
want to take one if you want. Let's see if there's another one.
First strategy.
I'll take this. Or which one would you feel better about?
Well,
Doesn't that make sense?
Because you're gonna have to maintain anything else you put in there anyway, so.
And then I guess next meeting, I would like to bring up the funding, or at least talk about, consider funding an update of the open space plan. The last one was done, like he said, it's too old for us to be able to apply for any grants. It's not really our responsibility, it really should be planning and Concom, I think, but,
How much does that cost?
I don't know.
Did I miss it, or did you do CPC committee reorganization?
No, I didn't.
Oh, all right.
Who wants to be chair?
Oh,
Everybody turns their head and looks down at their papers.
are you kidding? Cindy, you do a great job.
Well,
Cindy, you should be the chairman.
Really?
I'll take it
Come
until
on.
June, that's it. Done. Next reappointments, since we're already halfway there. I don't know how we usually handle this. Betsy is currently vice chair.
So it would be Betsy.
I guess you have to make a motion, right?
I move that I nominate Cindy to be the chairman. Any second?
Second.
Second.
Discussion?
Any discussion?
No.
Yes.
Oh.
I can't believe the job that Cindy has done over this year, working for the Norfolk Community Park at Rockwood Road. It's unbelievable. What's that?
Oh, you mean guns?
It is unbelievable.
Yeah.
Thank you, Betsy.
Must be day and night.
Sometimes I just take days off.
Sure you're not going to be considered the Citizen of the Year for the Norfolk Community?
Oh,
League?
yeah. I nominate her for that.
No.
Does anybody
is
second?
that the
Oh, has that
one?
been
It
seconded?
was seconded.
All those in favor of Cindy being the chairman, say aye.
I
Aye.
got 2 votes over here.
All right, and I gotta make sure that we reorg next June or July.
That's fair.
Okay. All right, Betsy, you are currently vice chair. Does anyone else wish to be vice chair, or do you wish to continue to be vice chair?
I'll continue the small.
We're down a
role.
member, aren't we?
We have no planning board person?
Right.
I know that Andrea
Mike
would-
was the planning board person.
No.
No, he's in at-large.
Oh, he's at large. Oh.
He's on the zoning.
What's the problem with planning?
I
Do
know
they
that
just-
Andrea
they never?
would like to be the planning board representative.
I don't think that they've appointed an associate member yet either. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure. All right, I'll make a motion to name Betsy Pine as vice chair.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Who would like to be clerk? Somebody has to do it. Main duties, read the minutes, make changes.
Who's the clerk now? Paul?
It was Peg. It was Paul, then it was
yeah.
Peg.
Oh, Betsy, why
I
don't you
could
be
go
the...
No,
back.
are you kidding?
Reading minutes. Jeez. Paul.
Betsy, how about you?
I just...
Good writer.
You usually read the minutes.
All right, I will do this.
Okay. Thank you. I nominate.
You wouldn't name Gumps, but you want me to do the minutes.
And,
Well, you can alter the minutes to
honestly,
say
You're my
Gumps.
friend.
I have to say,
You can put
when
Gumps in
Paul
there.
was clerk, it was during Gumps, and you weren't here a heck of a lot. And how many used to stack up for him to sign, Michelle?
Oh my God, I think we had like 12.
The all meeting one.
Publicly humiliate Paul.
That's fine.
I nominate Betsy Whitney to be clerk.
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right.
Now, the minutes, I never did find when Cindy said.
I said August.
October. Well, I said, I don't seem to remember getting October minutes. Now that I think of it, I don't seem to remember going to an October meeting.
And I wrote back, I was like,
Because
yeah,
we
there was
didn't
no
have
October meeting.
But then, I don't have August. That's when I had to sit out in the peanut gallery.
Oh, all right.
Did we get minutes?
I have them.
Oh, I didn't, I searched all the way back. Did you get them in August? Did anybody else?
I don't
I
know.
don't know, I got them, I've gotten them the last couple of months. I think I said no. That's why when I saw this, the October, I was.
That was I was just thinking.
Well, that's good.
I was thinking
yeah.
the last 2 meetings, and so it just came out September and October without really thinking about the dates. All right, well, Michelle, what I'll do is I'll send you my changes, and we can try again next month. All right, anyone else, anything else they want to bring up? Yeah. Shoot. Yeah. All right. No, any other discussion, items, anything?
I have a question in the minutes of the September 26th meeting. I think it has to do with the Jane and Paul's Farm Study Committee or Working Committee. Consultant Tom Houston has forwarded a report.
Oh, I changed that.
Does
Yeah,
that have
well,
anything to do with Jane and Paul's Farm?
yes. I had asked before the working committee started, I was moving along and getting, excuse me, putting in place someone to develop the highest and best use plan.
Yeah.
Which would be used in the appraisal. So that's what that was, and I did change that. It was a highest and best use proposal. And then when the committee was formed and the Trust for Public Land started getting involved, and before the committee was formed, Andrea advised me not to move forward with it because if the owners of Jane and Paul's are interested in working with the Trust for Public Lands, they have very specific requirements for their appraisals and everything else. So it didn't make sense to go forward with actually contracting for anything until we knew if they're going to be working with Trust for Public Lands, if they're not going to be working with
So
Trust for Public Lands.
is that implying that
just
the
on
Trust
hold.
for Public Land might do the appraisal themselves?
No, but they would have people that they use in certain requirements that would have to be met by whomever did it.
Oh, so they might tell us what they need to get out of it.
Exactly,
So we wouldn't want to do like a half-baked job.
exactly, and have to pay twice. So that all is just kind of on hold until we know where the property owners are thinking.
Oh my gosh. All right, we need to pay attention to that
All right,
When's your next meeting?
tomorrow.
Oh,
So-
that's right.
Tomorrow night,
our next meeting will
7
be
o'clock.
the first Wednesday in December, which looks like the
Morning?
4th.
night.
All right, what are we,
Is the 4th going to be, or is that 1, 2, 3, 4?
oh, next CPC?
Yeah, I think it looks like December 4.
Okay.
Whatever is the
First
first
Wednesday.
Wednesday, December 4.
December 4. Oh,
So it's in 2 weeks.
No, December 4. This is November 6.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, Paul, yeah.
All right.
Get my Christmas shopping done quickly.
Anything else? If not, we'll have a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Any, is there a
Second.
second? Any other discussion? All in favor? Aye, we are adjourned.